All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call will show all the council members are present. I need a approval of the agenda and affidavit of posting. So moved. A motion Wensoff, second. Reed, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we approve our agenda. Our announcement of closed session action is that we gave direction to our council. And I will now read our meeting protocol. The mayor shall maintain order at the meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order, and the council has a responsibility to be a model of respectful behavior in order to encourage community participation and citizen input at council meetings. The council and the audience are expected to refrain from using profane language and or ridiculing the character or motives of council members, staff, or members of the public, and to maintain the standards of tolerance and civility. The town council will review the agenda at 10 p.m. to ascertain which items will be heard that evening and which, if any, will be continued to another meeting. Any matter not started by 11:30 p.m. will be continued to an adjourned or regular council meeting unless the council votes to suspend this rule. Please take this opportunity right now to turn off all cellular phones or place them in silent mode. We have a number of announcements tonight. Fairfax Food Pantry going strong, always needing volunteers. Saturdays 9 to 11, feeding hundreds of families in the area. Fairfax Community Church, 2398 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. There is a vacancy on the Open Space Committee to complete an unexpired term to June 30th, 2014. Vacancy on the Fairfax Youth Commission for Ross Valley Youth between the ages of 14 and 19. Vacancy for a youth commissioner to serve on the Park and Rec Commission for a 2-year term. Vacancy on the volunteer board for a full 3-year term to end on September 30th of 2015. FEMA map update. The planned public meeting will be held on January 17th, 2013, not in October. Town picnic will be held on Sunday, September 16th from noon to 5 at the Contratti baseball field. Volunteers are needed. And there will be a trash talk, a zero waste panel discussion sponsored by Sustainable Fairfax on Thursday, September 20th from 6:45 to 9 p.m. at the Fairfax Community Church, 2398 Sir Francis Drake. This is our, are there any other announcements? Yeah. Okay. This is our opportunity now for open time for public expression. You have a 3-minute time limit per person. If you wish to address the council, please approach the podium, state your name and address. Individuals have 3 minutes to speak, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. This time is set aside for individuals wishing to address the council on matters that are not listed on the agenda.
Michael McIntosh, since council gave direction to council about the closed session, if you'd please discuss what that is, I'd very much appreciate it.
It is a closed session for a reason. So that's not something that we're required to make a comment on.
But if there has been direction given, and I'm sure Jim could step in here, I believe you can still give us the category of the subject matter.
Jim?
Because discussion or direction was given.
What happened in the closed session is subject to the attorney-client privilege. If you all choose to waive that, you can, but you're not required to.
We're not waiving that right now.
Okay. In addition, the town is out of compliance with my FOIA request. All things that are not presented in a FOIA request need to be explained and detailed with great accuracy what is not given and for what purpose, so it can be challenged. And I encourage the council to do this correctly because the documentation I've been given is very incomplete.
I don't know if staff has any report on that or not.
I can just tell you that I did request that Mr. McIntosh tell me if he knew of something that was missing and that I would provide it. I gave him everything we had in our file that I could find.
Okay, well, I mean, even my original request identified things of notice of termination, proof of publication, correspondence with the engineers, the calculations for the pipe, and all these things actually were not presented. And of the documentation that was copied, over 50% was pertained to the Fair and Selm Shopping Center, which I can show you by stacks I tied up in groups. that are not relevant to the project as requested. I'm still very happy to pay the town the fees of copying cost, but I would like the town to be correct in their compliance and response.
Perhaps you can help me by telling me, letting me know.
Okay, I mean, even
What-
if you look
if
at my
you could
original
do it-
request,
Yes, maybe we could go over that. You know, you can call me or something, we could go that over, and I could find those documents for you.
all right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Cindy Ross, and I've mentioned this before to the council, but since the last time I brought this up, I've talked to several other people, at least 4 or 5 other people that have had a similar issue and concern to mine, which is that there really is quite an unsafe situation going on with the state of our sidewalks, some of our roads, some of the curbs, some of the crosswalks and lack of crosswalks. And I know that there's concern, you know, about not having funding or whatever to fix it, but I really would implore the council to try to figure out some way to work with us. You know, in the last week alone, I've spoken to 2 different friends that, you know, have tripped on curbs. Somebody injured his ankle. One of my neighbors fell not once but twice. And these are relatively young, able-bodied people that normally, you know, are not just tripping for no reason. If able-bodied people are having that, you know, that difficulty, there are some folks around town that maybe are disabled or use wheelchairs or other devices. It's really, really become a serious problem. And I know that when I've talked to Larry Bragman about it, he has kindly offered to, you know, have me show him some of the areas that I'm concerned about, but I guess that hasn't happened yet, and I'm just hoping that at some point it can happen, that, you know, that the town take a look at that and try to figure out a way for some of the especially problematic areas to see if something can be done. So, thank you.
Cindy, I know you've brought this up many times, and thank you for doing so. Particularly, I know your mom is on in years, and I'm concerned about seniors who also feel reluctant to visit our downtown because of the difficulty they might face.
Yeah.
And perhaps Judy or council can talk to the issue of who actually owns the sidewalk. Certainly, there are areas where we, the town, do, but there's and I know I'm stepping over Judy's well-worn consideration of this issue, about who actually owns many of the sidewalks about which you're concerned. So Judy, could you labor a moment on that?
Well, first of all, Cindy, I wanted to tell you that the council has budgeted money for sidewalk repair. We have so much every year in the budget, and we try and do the most critical pieces first. We have, I think, 3 areas of sidewalk downtown that we've targeted, and that'll be happening soon. And we don't have a tremendous amount of money. We do budget a certain amount every year. I think it's $10,000 for this year. And we have already identified a few of the worst spots to fix. And so we are aware of it, and we are trying to do it. And as you can imagine, because of finances, we do it incrementally. We can't do it all at one time. What David's referring to is that we do have an ordinance where the sidewalks, some of the sidewalks are the responsibility of the fronting property owner, not the town. So some of them, you might think they're the town's and they're not. And, you know, there's some that are like Fair End, some of those sidewalks, some of those belong to the shopping center. And but I appreciate it, and I would like you, maybe you can tell me some of the real, what you see as someone who's walking around a lot, if you could let me know what some of those critical areas are. Okay, I'd be happy to hear about that.
Yeah, that's just what I've been trying to do.
Okay.
And I appreciate you saying that, but this is the first that I've heard that there has even been some money budgeted
Yes.
for that. So I would appreciate, especially since I have been bringing this up, you know, if I could be kind of kept in the loop, I'd be happy
Yeah.
to take you around town or, you know, discuss with you some of the areas that I've identified.
Okay,
Great,
thanks.
thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. My name is Andy Perry. I live in Cypress Drive here in Fairfax and am the advocacy director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I wanted to share with the council a few efforts that are underway through the Marin County Bicycle Coalition to remedy some of the issues of concern here in Fairfax regarding cyclists. We're well aware of the issues that have arisen concerns that have been raised in these chambers about cyclists running stop signs and the subsequent actions that have been taken by the Fairfax Police Department. MCBC has a Share of the Road program. We work with law enforcement in many of the cities where we partner throughout the county. We are also working with the town of Fairfax Police Department and Officer O'Callahan, who's the traffic officer here, on dealing with some of the issues as best we can. We certainly are not in control of every cyclist that is on the road, but we do have a number of things that we are doing. One of the things that I wanted to mention is some of the problems that we're seeing are a result of the great successes that we've had here in the county. Between 1999 and 2010, the county has seen 159% increase of cycling on weekdays and 172% on weekends. In Fairfax, in the latest counts, it was 422% since 1999. Any of you that hang out downtown during the weekends know that those, actually that was a weekday number, but the numbers are huge here in Fairfax, and there's a lot of problems that come with it now. It's not just about numbers, it's about people following the law. MCBC is committed to safety, and what we do is we take lots of different actions to urge cyclists to follow the law. We do it in our newsletter. I'm in touch with the East Bay Bicycle Coalition and the San Francisco Bike Coalition to urge them to put stuff in their newsletters for cyclists coming from other communities coming to ride here, because they're not all Marinites that are coming in the group rides and the team rides. And I want to also acknowledge for members of this community the frustration that people have. I too share frustration when people are not following the law, and we take it very seriously at the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. No one wants to see their loved ones in dangers. I'm also aware of a lot of elderly people that talk to me about how scary it is when a dangerous situation arises. So the fact that the Fairfax Police have been cracking down on it is not at all a problem for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. We support efforts to ensure that people are following the law. And if I could just have one more minute as an organization.
You actually have 2 more because you're representing a
Thank
group,
you.
so go ahead.
I'll only take another minute or so. The Marin County Bicycle Coalition works to help create bike lanes and bike paths and tunnels and bridges and all kinds of facilities to the extent possible to separate cyclists from traffic to reduce the kinds of conflicts that we're seeing. So we continue to do that, and we do that in all 12 jurisdictions around the county. And one of the things I wanted to say too is I wanted to urge, and the whole community isn't obviously here, but I just want to urge a level of tolerance for people and to resist the temptation to stereotype cyclists. The cyclists, it turns out, are there are children, there are parents, there are brothers, there are sisters, they're actually us. There's a few of you up there at the council. So I hope that when people start stereotyping, that they recognize that doing that creates ill will, and ill will actually creates danger on the road for cyclists and a much unpleasant experience for all. Cyclists are also drivers. They're not just some kind of a different kind of a creature out there on the road. So while MCBC works to deal with the growing pains, we're working very hard again to make the road safe and urging tolerance, and we hope to continue to work with Fairfax to make sure that these issues are dealt with in an appropriate way so that we can all be sharing the road. And as mode shifts to more cycling, which is going to continue to happen, that we all can find a way of being in harmony on the roads. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy. Seeing no other public comment, I'm going to close our public comment time and move on to reports and presentations. Bruce, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening.
Cool. There you go.
So, thank you. So the general plan was adopted recently after a year of environmental impact review, and as a result, the council has appointed a general plan implementation committee. So this is our first report, and our understanding is that we will be giving these reports quarterly to the council. So we appreciate that opportunity. So tonight we wanted to mostly report on what we see as our role, what we understand as our policy and our process, and get your input from council members as to your understanding of the same. We have Diane Causey as a former member of the GPAC and member of the GPIC as well. We have courtesy of Jim, we have some fresh new copies of the general plan to pass out to you. Would you want to give them to the council members? And it'll take you more than this evening to read it. But one of the things we'd like to ask is that you really familiarize yourself with the general plan as much as possible. It is quite a document. Came out of many years' work in town, and everybody that we've talked to has been very impressed with the process that this town has gone through. So we, in terms of what GPIC believes we're up to, we see that this plan is rather daunting, and as a matter of fact, it has programs in it that were to be completed in 2010 and in 2011, but it's now just becoming the general plan. So the first year, 2012, is heavily loaded as a result of that, and as a result of the fact that, of course, everybody wants their program to be started immediately. So we do need to prioritize, and that's really what we see as one of our primary roles in the GPIC. So we see ourselves as opening lines of communication with other bodies within town, including council, including staff, all of the different groups who are mentioned in the plan. We also have, I believe you probably have it in the back of that, there's a matrix that's actually a spreadsheet printed out here. It's even more fun as an actual spreadsheet because you can sort it and go through it. But we have every program in that plan listed in this matrix. There are over 500 of them, so that's a fairly daunting amount of work. And that matrix also has columns in it in which it indicates for the different groups like the Planning Commission or the Police Department or the various different groups within town, which of those programs have their name on them. Some programs have more than one name on them. But you can go through and see what council, for example, is responsible for. It's a lot. And so as we go through this, GPIC sees itself as liaisoning with these different groups, opening lines of communication to both help these groups understand what their place is in the general plan and what they should be taking a look at, and also getting feedback from the group as to how this might go and what things connect with each other, and in short, trying to prioritize and see what we can do about making it as efficient as possible to get as many as possible of these items done. So we, in regard to that, we've identified some categories that we believe that these things fit into, and we'll be lumping them into categories and trying to see synergies among them. Some of the things that are in here are already done. They're already being done. Others of them there are programs in the plan that are actually duplicates of each other because the different elements of the plan refer to the same things. So as we lump them together, this list will get a little bit more manageable and a little bit less frightening, but still pretty frightening. So we've got in this report, we've got some categories that we've identified right now, including one of the big ones is education. A lot of the items in the plan really have to do with education of the community. For example, on the safety element, there's very little we can do to straighten out our windy streets and things like that, but one thing we can do is to try to educate people about how to react to emergencies. So a lot of things like that could be put together as sort of one list of the things that the general plan calls for education on, and then try to get that down to some sort of a packet that people see repeatedly, welcoming new people to town and so forth. So that's one thing we see that we can do, is to combine things and see where there are synergies. Cataloging and mapping things is a category of things in there. Creating guidelines, actually creating and modifying ordinances, there's a certain amount of that called for in the general plan. And then revising zoning is related to that. So there's quite a bit that we're going to be having over the years to sort through. This is a 20-year general plan at this point. In terms of prioritizing, some of the criteria that we've been looking at include public safety, Obviously, the greatest public benefit for any one of these projects to just benefit the public both within Fairfax and outside of the scope of our town. We have to take into account costs, both time and money, for these things, ease of accomplishment, outside influences. Some of these things maybe we would love to do, but there are other agencies we have to work with that may make it more difficult or easier. And then, as I said, how to bundle things into different ways so that we can make efficient work of it. So that's basically where we are at this point. We don't have a set of priorities for you, but we have some ideas about how to approach this issue, and I would really welcome your feedback.
Thank you so much, Bruce. The Matrix is great. I was definitely poring over it and going, "Oh my God!" But it's exciting to see something that's been worked on for so long in the implementation phase. So I'll send it to council and see. Yeah, Ryan.
I'd like to first say that this is just such an amazing amount of work that has already been done. It's kind of like, you build the foundation for something and then all of a sudden, or you draw the blueprints and then actually there's a day you start breaking ground on a project, and when 20 years go by, it starts out with a hole in the ground and 20 years later it's a cathedral. So it's really exciting that you're actually at the part where you're actually implementing it. Something I thought about off the top of my head that may engage the public to actually get more input and maybe even join or be more active, maybe to put something on the town website that shows 2 of 500, and every time you go, you might see one more. When they want to raise money for the schools, they put the thermometer up there, and all of a sudden you drive by 10 times in a week, and you start to see it grow, and it actually gets really close. Towards the end of those thermometers, a lot of people are just pushing it over the top. So it may be something, if we start and incorporate it with the website in the town, that maybe you get another chunk of interest, and people go, "Wow, we were at 3 just last week. What happened?" And they might go back and look, and then people might take notice that this is a group of people in our town that's actually doing work, and it's actually benefiting them, and it may just engage more people and really kind of snowball the effect. So good luck in the cathedral.
I would say, Bruce, although your political radar is well tuned, and this community as well as anybody, if you run into a roadblock, don't be shy about coming to us and saying, "Boy, we seem to be stuck here on this one. What do you think? How do we adjust this?" I'm sure we would hear that from the planning director as well and the manager. But where are your resources on this? We are in your debt. I must say, the affection we hold for you is found by the fact that you're still standing there. Anybody who hands us a 46-page memo, immediately calls into question, and then to hand us a door stopper like this on the side of it, I think speaks to how much appreciation we have for you. But please, we're your resource here. This council, and as you say, for 20 years, I dare say in 20 years there's going to be a fair amount of turnover. Hopefully you'll still be standing in 20 years. Work with the new folks as they come along.
I'll just mention the council knows this, but for the public, the GPAC is GPIC is a little bit different from GPAC. GPAC was open membership, anybody could join, and GPIC actually has prescribed members, and so we have John Reed from the council, and we have Shelley Hamilton from the Planning Commission, we have Open Space, and people from there we go, and we have former GPAC members, and 2 members at large. One of the members at large position is currently not filled, so there's actually an opening at this point. So it's a unique committee, and really in a good position to at least attempt to sort through this prioritization process.
Yeah, I'm probably the person who's read this the closest, having spent 10 years of my life working on it too. But it's amazing how much is in the general plan, and how many details and aspects of life here in Fairfax, and the Fairfax that we all love at the center of our universe anyway. And the general plan really strives to try to make it even better, and keep the qualities that people really like about Fairfax, and and it kind of codifies well, it doesn't codify it, it's what the code hangs on, basically. It's what drives zoning, and that what drives the way that you see the town. And so I would encourage people to be, well, I would first of all encourage my fellow council members to read this plan. And David, I mean, it's more than coming to us for help. I mean, there's a surprising amount that's already been assigned to the council, and it behooves you to find out what that is. You know, I mean, some of it is, you know, you'll enthusiastically support, and other ones you'll scratch your head and you say, well, how do we accomplish this? And, you know, that is really where, you know, the creativity of it is. And Ryan, you talked about thermometer. There are some thermometer type of things, certainly around carbon footprint and energy savings, that sort of thing, that are proposed in here in terms of letting people know how we're doing and giving people tools that they can use to reduce their carbon footprint, for instance. So I would encourage everybody to become familiar with it. And yes, it's daunting, that first couple of years, especially because it's all at the beginning, and some of that will roll into year 3 and 4, I'm sure, but hopefully not too much.
Larry, did you have any?
I wanted to mention on the educational part of it, just if you look around, you see the cameras, and we've got an operator here, that we do have a community media center, which has video production facilities, which I think we could fold into this to do those educational classes and put them on the website or create a website so that people could go and look at the classes or take the classes online. So there's a number of educational components that, as I went through, I was thinking, you know, would be perfect for you or somebody from your committee to check out the Community Media Center over on A Street in San Rafael. It's completely open door. And yeah, we've got some work here for the council. The amnesty program for second units is long overdue. And there's a few others too. There's actually a whole thing in here about getting a pedestrian master plan going, which, you know, I think we might want to reconvene the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee and kind of have a 2-year review. It's been 2 years. So it's a very good blueprint for us. It's a good way for us to map our progress, and excellent piece of work and really a fine accomplishment, and our thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that it would be great to get, I mean, and I don't, as I was looking at this matrix, the first thing I was doing is like, oh, can we like use this to, can it be sorted in such a way that it's sorted by, these are the responsibilities of the town council. That's so good. And so my sense that was in looking at this was like, let's, you know, what would be helpful for me would be to get a list of these are the things the town council is responsible for, and we can start plugging away at them.
We created that matrix as an Excel spreadsheet, and that's really the way to look at it. So I'm sure you can get a copy of it as the spreadsheet, and then you can sort it. I'd be happy to work with any of you to show you some of the cool things you can do in Excel, but you can group all the things that are assigned to each group together. You can sort them by when they're due and so forth. And what we expect as we work on this is that we'll probably add additional columns to those spreadsheets. So if we put things in categories, we may have a column for which category they fit in. And so that gives you this sort of live ability to work with it. We've actually had an interesting discussion thus far about whether we can make that available to the public on the town's website. And the question is about Brown Act work. We can't actually change that in between a meeting, and so we're sort of struggling with how we can at the same time as we comply with the Open Meetings Act, which we certainly intend to and have, but at the same time how we can use the ability of many people to get onto the web and many people to have access to spreadsheet tools and things to be able to interact with that in a really useful way and get the citizenry, the council, planning department, and everyone involved in being able to really interact with it. So we're open to suggestions on that. I think that's kind of an interesting topic.
Okay. Well, please do send us that in the Excel spreadsheet format. I'd appreciate that. That'd be great.
Okay.
All right. Let's take any questions or comments from the public on this item. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you very much, Bruce. Really beautifully done. Yeah. Okay, our next item is number 2, report and presentation update on the bike spine project. John Reed.
Yeah, I know my name is on this item here. I should call out that it is also Larry Bragman, also a council member here, actually got the money for this project and has been very involved with it from the start. I think my name's probably on it because I gave a run-through description of the route last month. We've both been working on it, of course, along with many members of the community. There's also a PowerPoint presentation along with a Google fly through the town presentation. I'm not exactly sure how that works button-wise, but I can basically walk you through the route, or I mean, it was recommended to just run the PowerPoint first off as a jumping off place. Is that correct? I could go down there if you want me to. I'll announce it from here. And basically what this is a grant from from a couple of pots of money from the Transportation Authority of Marin and the, oh, here. Does that work?
Okay. Yeah, I got it to go forward once, so does this sound all right? Anyway, the overall goal was to promote safety for kids getting to school, and when we first started Safe Routes to School, we started looking at what routes were the safest ones for kids to get to and from the various schools around town from various areas in Fairfax, and we identified a few different routes which seemed to be good, and then basically all of us had kids in the local elementary school or the middle school or something like that. These kids grew up, then 10 years later we find out, oh, people are reinventing the wheel again and they're picking out different routes and they're trying to go through the whole process over again. And Larry, at that time, was on the Transportation Authority board, which is where highway money mostly comes from, but a little tiny bit is for bicycles and pedestrians. And so basically the idea was to identify a route through Fairfax. We talked about it as a bike spine, a spine running through the middle of town, and the idea was to have a central route people can get to from various different areas around town. This is a phased project. The first project is basically the only phase that you're going to see, at least at this point, and basically starts at the Cascade Gates, runs along Bolinas Road, then Park Road here, and then it actually bifurcates and goes in one direction. It goes up Arroyo down to Scenic, turns left and goes up to Manor, and then out towards Manor Circle, and then the various schools are out in that direction. When it's returning, because of sight lines in the direction where you can see cars coming and whatnot, it actually comes along Sequoia to return in this direction. And the thought was to identify the central spine. People can get from their various neighborhoods to that route, and then that will lead them to school. It has, it's basically signs and pavement markings. Here's a map of what it is. I guess my finger's not hitting the button at exactly the right time. But you can see basically what I've described. After it gets to Marin Circle, where the buses turn out on Drake, it follows along Sir Francis Drake, which is where several different schools are, Manor Elementary, Cascade Canyon, and White Hill Middle School, along there. And basically the signage happens at intersections, and the markings are green, share the road type markings on the streets themselves. It's a thermoplastic street pavement marking. And I guess that's what the PowerPoint is telling you, right? Here's a here's a sign on the left, and then these green markings are what would be on the streets. The one in the middle is termed a sharrow. It's because there's double arrows on the top and a sign of a bicycle. And this lets bicyclists know where they're supposed to be riding, and it also lets motorists know that this is a shared route, and in particular, combined with the school signage, it's kids riding their bikes to school. The markings on the right are for to be put in bike lanes, and this is primarily along Sir Francis Drake, where you have the 5-foot wide bike lane along the side. So you have a continuation of this green marking with the picture of the bicycle and then an arrow heading which direction. What is this telling you? This is telling you that there's a bunch of stop signs at right now there's a number of intersections that don't have any stop signs for any direction, and a couple of them have one or two, but we've identified a lot of places where there needs to be stop signs, and I know that people have been coming to me for years asking for stop signs at particular places, and so we've got the traffic engineers buy off that yes, this is a warranted place to have them, and basically those stop signs are at Arroyo and Spruce, Azalea as it comes down to Arroyo, and then a 3-way stop at Scenic and Arroyo, and then with the bridge that comes from Drake to Marin Circle, there's going to be a stop sign there too. There's one parking place which is right kind of in the wrong place to park a car because it blocks cars and bicycles from seeing who's coming in the other direction. So that is the one parking place that's threatened by this plan. So let me see. And here is a PowerPoint showing those 5 arrows there are, well, the 4 top arrows are all showing the stop sign locations. The bottom arrow is pointing to the one parking place. It's on the inside of that turn on Sequoia Road. And historically, as a side note, that is across the street from where the funicular station was that took the funicular up the hill, if people know about that. Let me see. It's also, we've got money in there for redoing the striping and stop limit lines and things like that. Additional stop signs at the Bolinas and Park Road intersection. Basically rejuvenating things. Here's a picture of the school route sign. And this, I think, is the start of this kind of cool video brought to you by Google Earth. So I'll hit the button and see. Nope. It's on a different file, okay.
He's saying click it once and it'll play.
Click it once? Nope. Yeah, I think
Go to that slide.
I'm not sure where things are on this computer, but basically this is a fly-through of the thing, and I believe that this is maybe going to be on the town website. But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that technology exists, and it's kind of a, this is at window. Well, technical things being what they are. Well, if this comes up in the next 30 seconds or so, let's watch it. If not, check the town website because it's actually kind of cool. It's basically a bird's eye view from about 100 feet above, and you kind of see the town and flattened out houses, and it has little the placement of the road markings. They'll basically be alternating along the route, and then just thank you. Okay, here we go. So you can see the green markings represent the sharrows. They try to be just after an intersection. And this is the corner right here by Town Hall. And the building where you are right now, just this side of the School Street marking. This is where it splits, goes to the right and then down Arroyo. Azalea coming in from the right has a stop sign. And then this intersection that it's swiveling around is the one that gets a three-way stop. And now it's turning onto Manor. Here's Alima Road to the left, which is a later phase in, let's say, it's also a route to White Hill Middle School. Here's the Marin Bridge that gets a stop sign. And you see the bicycle and then the arrow, which is how that gets in. At the right turn to Manor, you have both symbols. There's Manor. There's a lot of roof space on those apartment buildings. Perfect for solar panels or anything. And we're coming up on Cascade Canyon School. And then here, instead of turning right on Glen Drive, White Hill Middle School is looking to keep all bikes and pedestrians, or as many as possible, off of Glen Drive, which you see in the background. So here there's the signage going along Shemran Court, and then that gray stripe that you see there is a pedestrian right-of-way that goes along to the side of Lefty Gomez Field and here to the school. Since this show this Google Earth thing has been done, there has been a path put in along the side of Lefty Gomez Field that leads out to Sir Francis Drake. Is finished? Probably doesn't go the other way. So on the Chemaran to the pedestrian route there in between the houses, it's signed for there. At a later, there's a 5-foot wide sidewalk along Sir Francis Drake that the path from Lefty Gomez, from the school along the side of Lefty Gomez ends at. It's 5 feet wide, which is kind of not enough for that many kids. So it's left open at that point. You know, they're signed to go along Chemaran, but they can also continue along the sidewalk, and they both lead to the same place. And we'll probably find that kids are going on both of those routes. One of them works better, you know, the sidewalk to the path works better for bicycles, so that's probably how they'll vote with their handlebars. But who knows, they're kids. So, thank you.
All right, questions from council members? Go ahead, Larry.
Just a note, you know, the project really got underway because one of our students was actually hit right across the street from Town Hall, which I'm sure Chris remembers. And so that incident was kind of the impetus to find the funding. And, you know, I think the theory is that a lot of the conflicts between bikes and cars, pedestrians and bikes, is because the infrastructure we have now, it's out of date. It was built 75 years, 50 years ago. And the struggle really is to find the funding and to get the financial priorities to get the funding to our local communities. And it's very difficult. There's actually been a cut in funding for bike and pedestrian at the federal level. This has become a target of the, you know, right-wing attack on communities. And so it's just something for our residents to be aware of, that we need to keep lobbying our representatives to prioritize the money for pedestrian and bike. I mean, we've heard Cindy's story and her observations, and, you know, these type of plans and projects are the things we love to do as local government. So, you know, we appreciate having your eyes on the ground, but, you know, ultimately, when we come together as a community and invest in this infrastructure, we can do things like this, which is really, it's building out green lanes and safe lanes for bikes and pedestrians. But it takes investment, it takes money to do it, and this is really kind of a first step for us. So thank you, great presentation.
Other comments from council members? And anyone from the public? Andy?
To express my appreciation for the work that John and Larry especially have done on this. And I wanted to point out to the whole council here and members of the community too that, and I was actually very surprised by this, the petition that was circulated by a community member here in Fairfax, when that got to the Transportation Authority of Marin, who basically is the overseer of the funds and distributes the funds, and to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee at TAM, it made a huge difference. I was actually kind of jaw-dropped. It rose the project to the top. It was a good project. It might not have been the best project, but regardless, it went to the top. I mean, certainly it was the best for Fairfax. So I want people to keep that in mind. And again, appreciating seeing this done. Really appreciate seeing, I don't go to any of these schools, needless to say, but seeing those sharrows on Bolinas Road is going to be particularly helpful. So thank you all for supporting this project.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. John, you had one more?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's something we talked about early in the project, and it's somehow, I don't know, maybe it fell through the cracks or whatever, but Alima Road is identified, it has some problems at the other end in terms of crossing Drake and getting over to White Hill Middle School. Nevertheless, that's a huge bike route, and I'm realizing that, you know, there's, you know, these hundreds of bikes that are coming here on the weekend are going to be seeing these things on the road, and they're going to be looking for a bike route, and Alima Road is one that they use a lot. And so I think in the same way that this project calls for a white sharrow to be imprinted on the street at the various directions that the Cascade gates, going out Cascade Drive and going out Bolinas Road. I think that the same thing should happen on Alima, so that, it's indicated at that point, like, there is a bike route there, because, a lot of times, that is the preferred route for many cyclists. In fact, I know White Hill Middle students have their own workarounds to get safely across Drake there. So while that section of Alima Road is outside of the scope of this particular project, it would be not much to add an additional Sharrow right there.
More money. We need more money.
And when is the groundbreaking, so to speak, on this one?
I think we're looking to go out to bid later this month, right?
We have to prepare the specifications to go with these nice plans, and since you haven't made any changes or suggested any additions, that should be able to go out soon. It has to be advertised for a while and takes time. I'm not sure when it'll actually get done. Hopefully before it rains would be wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. It would be wonderful. I saw a communication today from David Parisi, who's the traffic engineer on this project, and he has already been talking with the engineers to try to get that rolling. So he's aware also of that. So we just add the Alima Sharrow.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on. We have an interview and an appointment of a candidate to our volunteer board, and I saw Ted is here. Why don't you come on forward? It's always...
Just to tell you, Ted has been serving for about a year on the volunteer board. He filled out a vacant term, and he's willing to give it another 3 years, and we're delighted. So,
thank you, Judy. Do you want to say a little bit about your service and why you'd like to continue?
Bingo. It's been an interesting first year, and I'd be very happy and thrilled to have 3 more years to go. So there isn't much more I can say. We do have a lot of work to do there, and it's an interesting group of people, all very dedicated to the town, so I'm glad to be among them.
Any questions from council members? David?
Easiest vote of the night. After public comment, I would move that thank Ted for his service and appoint him for another term.
Other comments from council?
Only to second that.
Okay.
If there's any member of the public wants to comment.
Do we have any public comment? All right, seeing that, I have a motion, Weinsoff, second read. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, congratulations. Thank you very much.
Now, I'm the appointed member from the volunteer board on the General Plan and Implementation Committee. And now that you all have so graciously approved 3 more years for me, you got 30 days to read that general plan. After which, there'll be a little test that Jim's going to prepare for all of you. And the high score gets 2 fare bucks, dedicated to your favorite charity. And the one who doesn't get the high score, the lowest one, is dunked at next year's Fairfax picnic. So anyway, I hope you have a good time reading that document, because it's going to be very important. We all know that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, council member reports and comments. Ryan, you want to start off?
School's been out, and I tried to get a youth commission meeting for the week of school started. It didn't fly very well. I recognize that August is probably not the best month to schedule a youth commission meeting. So, but to report on the youth commission, we are going to re-up and regroup for another big event, and I think we're having a lot more success by trying to plan maybe 1 or 2 or 3 events a year, as opposed to just having a standing meeting, so that there's actually a theme that's going to go on, and they'll decide how they want to do it. Judy and I have talked about the budgets, and the youth commission really doesn't need a lot of money to do what they want to do, but it's great to have kind of an event-based meeting each time, so it'll be maybe in thirds or in quarters, and every quarter or every or twice a year they'll schedule a big event, and they will plan, decide. I don't do anything but steer ideas. They drive it, and if they want it, they have to do the work to get it, and it's been really great. And we're also pulling a lot of kids in that weren't in before. And when they realize that they're taking on the leadership role, they're actually asking for letters of recommendation and things to say, hey, I want my school hours. I started doing this for school hours, but this has been really fun. I really liked it. So to get some feedback from these people really early in my work with them has been great. No report for tree committee, no report for Ross Valley School Board, although I'm sure there will be another report on that next. And there's no major crimes oversight task force meeting.
Larry?
Community Media Center had a couple board meetings I attended. I serve on that board. I guess Bruce left, but if anybody sees him, he can call me about getting that video production done. Marin Telecommunications Agency did not meet. Marin Energy Authority has been meeting and will be meeting. Pretty dynamic developments at MEA. It's expanded to have 90,000 customers now. So the Marin Energy Authority now covers most of Marin County. So it's had a huge expansion in its customer base, and actually added the city of Richmond, which is another 30 or 40,000 customers. So that is a very interesting and dynamic agency. It's getting some criticism, as most public agencies do, but the criticism, I think, helps guide the agency to some extent. It is a new agency and is operating in a very highly regulated energy market that's regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. So it's a very interesting place to be as far as serving on a public board. So that's been meeting, has a meeting tomorrow night. That agency is going to a paperless process. We will not be getting agenda packets like this. Apparently they're going to be handing out iPads to us, and when I asked them about the cost of it, they said that they will be saving money by giving us an iPad. So we'll see. I offered to pay for mine. The other thing, I did have a meeting at the California Public Utilities Commission last week. There was a documented incidents, several incidents where representatives from Pacific Gas and Electric Company were infiltrating local activist groups on smart meters. And the California Public Utilities Commission Division of Ratepayer Safety did a report on that, issued about a 120-page report which documented the instances of spying and infiltration which occurred, and that is now an active case before the Public Utilities Commission. Very interesting matter. Obviously, the whole smart meter project has a lot of privacy implications, and certainly this instance of the utility actually breaching privacy and invading First Amendment rights of activists and customers is certainly a somewhat chilling example of what can happen. That case is moving forward. We had a meeting last week, sort of a mediation meeting, which I thought was interesting and helped focus all the parties on getting the matter resolved. So I may have something to report on that in the next couple months.
Thank you. John?
Okay. Let me see. I guess started out the month since our last meeting by doing some trail maintenance with Larry Bragman, where we put in, there was a trail, one of 100 different pedestrian trails here in Fairfax that go in between streets up and down the hillsides. And this particular one had some erosion happening to it in the last year or so, and so we put in some steps in the worst area of it, and it was actually, it felt good. just a couple of hours, but it really made a difference on that, and several neighbors told us that at the time. Let me see, attended a GPIC meeting, which we've heard about already, so I won't go into that too much, and bike spine meetings. With the Transportation Authority of Marin, they're on recess this month because of a lot of vacations, and so there wasn't a lot to do with that, but I did have a meeting with Peter Breen, who is on this trolley committee, I don't know what you call it, and Diane Steinhauser, who's the executive director of the Transportation Authority. And basically, because I was on the east-west corridor of the bicycle corridor there, we were looking at areas because they're both looking at some of the same right-of-ways and basically looking at how these two modes of transportation can interface and not get into trouble with each other and basically share the road. And just looking at opportunities to make those sync up. With the SMART train coming to downtown San Rafael, I think that that's an opportunity being seen both for the east-west bicycle corridor as well as this trolley, because they serve different populations and they're different sorts of things. The trolley, I think, is looking to service older people, and also, in particular, make an alliance with different businesses along the route, basically Fairfax, San Anselmo, and downtown San Rafael. Met with the volunteer board, and their board the previous month had, just after, I guess it was just before this meeting, had created a subcommittee around fire danger. And that is something that should have been actually on the announcements, that there are chipper days in October on a couple of Sundays coming up. And an announcement is going into the garbage bill, I believe. And there are some people working on that. You're shaking your head.
I don't think it's getting in the bill, but go ahead.
Really? Yeah, it was a back and forth thing. It was down to the wire for sure. Okay. And then, of course, the Streets for People event, which I thought was a terrific community event. And I, saw figures from only one business, a lot of anecdotal things, statements that the business was way up. One of them said she did double the usual business then. And it was just a good Fairfax event, I thought. It was terrific. So that's it.
David?
Yeah, in addition to the Streets for People event, which I second everything John said, actually, and your terrific presentation at the chamber meeting, and as I've been attending these chamber meetings over the last many years, I just see a vibrancy in our business community as it picks up, and the interaction between the council now, I think starting back when Lou was mayor, has really, and Marianne, has really started, I think, fostered a really nice relationship between the governing and our important business community. But the major thing I attended from our perspective was the Flood Zone 9 meeting last week, so I'd like to labor for a few seconds on this. You guys have raised some issues the community has, and I made a point of coming up with some questions for them. John, I know you asked about the interface between Flood Zone 9 and the school district, and they told me that Public Works will be sitting down with the school district board in October to actually work on this as they do the detention basin interface up near Whitehall. The second point, and I recall Larry mentioned it, other people have, about, this is a lot of money. I mean, this is a lot of money. At the end of the day, Flood Zone 9 will probably net in, $40 million in fee money, $100 million in taxes, from federal tax and state tax dollars combined. The main issue is it's locked down. We decided upon a 10-year plan, but one of the questions was, where's some of the fungibility in this to meet immediate needs? And while you can't look out more than a year or two, the budget for this year did include some $29,000 or so for creek maintenance activities, and we're going to be addressing that later. But I did, since members of the community and members of the council have questioned that, each of the communities to get $5K to go in and do the work, and we'll discuss it in greater detail as to how we'll be getting reimbursed for the work that we already did in the creeks. The other thing was very interesting. There's been a long discussion now about the Army Corps of Engineers, the big dog in the fight, and the folks who, in a sense, govern the bottom of the bathtub. A very long discussion at Flood Zone 9 about changes, all for the good, at the Army Corps of Engineers. They're becoming less rigid than their reputation, deserved or undeserved, might have been, and now they're becoming a little more, one might say, more government user-friendly. And the flood zone folks have reached out to the Corps, and the Corps is going to be holding a charrette, a word we're familiar with here from our planning exercises. We've created a Flood Zone 9 subcommittee on which I will sit, and we will be sitting down and actually meeting with the Corps to see if there can be greater alacrity and swifter movement on this. And it is consistent with the Council's direction. I dragged up a February 2010 resolution that this Council passed, urging greater movement on the part of the Corps that passed this Council, and I think Ross did as well. So it's sort of a dynamic jumping off time. Money is being spent, the projects are moving forward, and the promises that were made when the flood fee was advanced, I think folks are going to begin to see them now rapidly advancing forward. And I would say certainly by the mid-years of the decade, 2016, 2017, there will be that, while we can never be assured, and while the promise is to get us to sandbag safety, I think that now is the dynamic moment when the studies have been completed and the shovels are beginning to hit the dirt. So as things move forward, we've decided to meet quarterly, which is much more than the Floods Advisory Board has met in the past. I'll be coming back and updating you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was certainly busy with Streets for People. It was really fun. I want to thank our Chief of Police and our staff, who just were extraordinarily helpful and patient. It was a nice collaboration between Sustainable Fairfax. Really, Renee Goddard has held that event as a vision for a long time, and so it was a real dream come true for her, and she was really happy. And I invited her to be here tonight so that we could all applaud her and her extraordinary hard work on that. And unfortunately, she had someplace else to be, but I wanted to be sure to pass along her hard work and the hard work of folks on the Chamber of Commerce, as well as John and I, who served on the committee that made it happen. And we worked really hard to predict any problems that would come and try to mitigate them, and it ended up being a really smooth day, and a lot of fun. And I only heard really positive, fun things. So it was a great event, and I think it is something we would love to do again. There were numerous comments of, we should do this every Sunday, which I said no. About a couple of times a year. So we'll see as we go forward where the energy is and where the money is, because it did certainly cost funds, most of which were provided by the Fairbuck, which was exciting to have the Fairbuck have its first sort of community project. But so that was certainly a big part of my past month. The Chamber of Commerce regular meeting, as well as their mixer, I attended. And the other really interesting meeting that I attended was with Marin Sanitary Service, and that was as part of the Zero Waste Committee. And unfortunately, Larry wasn't able to make it, but we're 1 year out from our contract. And if anybody remembers our contract from last year, I think fairly simply say probably one of the most aggressive resource hauling contracts that I know of. And we incorporated a lot of elements into it, and there were a number of things that had kind of a 1 year timeline. And so I met with Steve Rosa from Marin Sanitary Service and Renee Goddard and Elizabeth Baker, both from Sustainable Fairfax, to see how are we doing a year out. And there are a couple of issues that we still need to get rolling on. The multi-unit apartment pilot has so many issues with it. but we're plugging away at trying to get that to move forward. There is going to be, the bringing compost back to the community from our food waste has been extraordinarily popular and really smooth and easy. Many thanks to our Public Works Department on making that successful. An event's going to come up in October, and I think near the end of October, that we're sort of calling Take Back Day, and it's going to be an event where you can bring in paper that needs to be shredded and disposed of, medical waste in very specific ways, and electronic waste. And so honestly, it's sort of an opportunity for us to talk more about how what we do have for options in Fairfax, as well as really educate people on the services that we're getting, not only through our hauler, but through a small amount of grant money that's coming from our tipping fees to do education that Sustainable Fairfax is pushing forward. So we're really lucky as a town that a lot of the sort of education and legwork is being done by Sustainable Fairfax, which works out really nicely. And the other thing that we're getting that we wrote into our contract was numbers. And that is really what is it? We know that our diversion, is good. We know that it's, in the past that it's been, for Marin Sanitary Service, their service area, it's around 74% of everything that goes to the curb gets diverted away from the landfill. And those are great numbers. I think the numbers nationwide are more like 35% gets diverted, so we're doing great. But our goal is to get to 94% by 2020, and we're on our way. And so they're putting together those numbers for us now on how we're improving, because we have very specific kind of benchmarks in our contract leading us to really get to that number. So it was a good meeting, and I think it's a meeting that we should continue to have on a yearly basis to check in. It's really easy to get these contracts approved and done and then kind of sit back and go, well, we did that. But exactly, yes, there was that. So since it took us that long to get it done, it certainly, I think, behooves us to make certain that that they're abiding by their part of the contract, we're abiding by our part, and we're getting whatever other community help we can. So that was a fun, good meeting. And I think that's all. Judy, interim town manager report.
Thank you. This is about this item is about the Pastory project. And the council elected to postpone the repair along the creek at the end of Pastory. The engineering company who's worked with us on this project all along, CSW, has sent Georgia McDaniel to us tonight with a proposal. The council wants to find out what the feasibility is to go forward with the project in a modified way. And hopefully we'll hear the feasibility of this, or what at least it will cost us to get some kind of a feasibility study. So Georgia, if you want to go ahead, I don't know what's easier for you, just to stand at the podium and discuss it, or do you want me to ask you questions, or how would you like to proceed?
I guess my question is, I assume that all of the council members received copies of the email
Yes.
that had
Yes.
the different tasks
Right.
and the proposed fees. So I can answer any questions that you may have regarding this.
Do you want to do you have that in front of you? Would you like me to do it? There are 4 tasks that you outlined to complete a feasibility study, and then you gave a budget for that to get to that point. And if you could do that part, then the audience will also know what we're talking about.
Okay. One of the first things that needs to be done is some additional survey work, because looking at an alternate alignment for the pipe involves looking downstream further than the current project site. So need to have that information about, especially, additional topo, et cetera, what's going on. The footprint of of Wendy O'Rear's home, and other facilities, other important points to look at if you're trying to determine an alignment. The other thing would be meeting with all of the resource agencies and getting their input as to what would be required regarding permitting. I did send out an email to them, to the Corps, to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, to National Marine Fisheries Service, and to California Fish and Game. And the initial responses that I received was that you will need new permitting. And that they want to see sketches. A lot of the work has already been done as far as the permitting process, because we already have the Joint Aquatic Resource Permit application, which is referred to as a JARPA, that was all completed. It would be easy to just make some revisions to that. There are a lot of studies that have already been done regarding the project, and maybe there's some modifications there. Of course, the plans would have to be modified if a new alignment, if it does become feasible to do that. The third task on here is to look at the feasibility of that. The engineers will be doing that, and then provide a letter report to the town, to the council, about that. So you will know, is it feasible to really move forward with that option. Another task that was requested of me was that I contact the Cal, EMA, and FEMA representatives I've been working with over all the years to see if there is a way to extend the time period for construction. I did that for this year, and I will see if I can get that done again to extend it one more year. And that will take the preparation of some documentation as to why are you asking for this? It's been 6 years already. And so that's what's involved with the fourth task.
Thanks so much.
Oh, sure.
No, don't go anywhere. We don't let anybody off that easy. Just a bit above my pay grade, but we may want to put you into contact with Stetson Engineers. You know where I'm going with this?
I've worked with Matt Smeltzer, and I actually worked with him on this project.
So do you think any of the hydrologic Buck Rogers analysis that they've done on this would be of use and satisfaction to number one of your 4 goals of the surveying, or are we talking apples and oranges?
I think the suggestion that you seem to be making is to get in touch with them and Matt, and I think that's an excellent idea. Because I talked with him previously about the project, worked with him on the design of it based upon all of his studies, and so that's a good suggestion to see, is there something that needs to be updated in addition to?
Matt Smeltzer, he walks on, another planet. He's an extraordinary expert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking also Jamie Riley, who's a Fairfaxian, actually, and did the hydrologic study. So if you're here at the break, I'll give you his number at Stetson, and he may just
perfect.
be able to plug right in there. Anything to save, time and a few dollars.
And one person I forgot to mention that I checked in with during the process and the design and everything was Jack Curley. So that it is my plan to again check in with him regarding everything.
In a sense, then you're doubling back, because Riley and Jack are guardians of the same information. So terrific.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Oh, Larry?
Because what happened this season, we ran up to the very end and, kind of got thwarted by the October 15th deadline, among other obstacles that interfered with our ability to complete the project. I would anticipate, well, I don't know what new obstacles will develop, but given that we know we have a tight timeline, how long do you think it's going to take just to get this phase done?
Will you hit your button again so we can hear you?
I think the task that'll take the longest is with Cal, EMA, and FEMA. My experience over the last 6 years has really showed me how long it takes to get something done and decisions made there. But I can push hard for that. As far as the other ones, I would think it's just a matter of weeks. Those can go pretty quickly, but the agencies will want to see some sketches. They'll want to see the feasibility study and what was the result of that study, and then make a determination as to, what do you need to do as far as permitting. And then going through that whole process again, the target would be to be able to start in the summer again, as soon as you can get into the creeks, in July, and get it done.
Okay, and the other thing, it's just, we need to know whether it's feasible.
Right.
So it's important for us to know if it's not feasible, then our path, is clear that we've got to use some other means to get this done.
Right.
So, both sides of it are very important as far as giving us direction, what we need to do, so.
What I will do is I will go back to the office and get a timeline for you as far as feasibility study, give you an idea of when the town can expect to receive that.
That would be really appreciated. Thanks a lot.
Other comments or questions from council members? Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the public? Thank you, Georgia.
Try that again. Michael McIntosh. One of the things that my FOIA specifically requested was the billing and correspondence through and for CSW with the town. That was another thing that was not complied with, and I believe when I asked Judy about it, she was told by Jim not to produce it. And so hopefully that can also be addressed, because I don't think that's correct. In addition, I forgot for the closed session, if there's any written correspondence, I believe it does need to be discussed or disclosed what the matter was when there's a request by the public. So if there's any written correspondence, which I know there is at least one, I believe it should be made public. So if you could please address the CSW billing and information, I'd appreciate it.
Council?
Yes.
I have no knowledge of a discussion of CSW billing. I think that your question about your public records information request, you're going to be talking to Judy about, and then we can talk about the details of that when you determine if there's some documents there that are responsive. As to the request for documents related to a closed session, I will check the statute. You've made the request and determine what, if any, documents are responsive to that, and let you know. And if there are documents that I have to release, I will do that.
Anything else from the public? I'm going to close public comment. This is just, are we approving this? Do we need to go through the process of approving this for her to move forward? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve this proposal from CSW? Motion Weinsoff.
And second, and just Judy, we still have money budgeted for this project that is still in our budget, don't we?
Yes, I can't tell you exactly.
No, that's okay, but because, okay. I'm going to second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Thank you, Georgia. Okay, we are on our consent calendar. Are there any council member comments or questions about the consent calendar, anything that needs to be pulled? Ryan?
I'd like to pull number 10 for discussion, which is approval of the renewal contract for the town website maintenance.
Okay, other ones?
Go ahead, sorry.
John?
Okay, I've got a small thing on the minutes, number 6, but I'd also like to pull 17, 18, and 19.
So much for this meat note. Okay, Larry, David? No. I was gonna, is there any?
Sorry, I did have, on 16, Judy, that's past story, which is that old grant we got a long time ago. There is, just if you could make a note to ask Mark, on the crosswalk across Center, it goes to a pedestrian ramp that is not ADA compliant. And I think we can make it ADA compliant if we just cut a curb, sort of, it's like a triangular piece of curb that's, and I mean, if we're going to be putting this kind of money into the sidewalk, I think we should make it a legal crosswalk.
Okay.
You know, I don't think it's going to be a lot of money, but I really think we should.
You mean to add that to the project?
Well, I think it should get done at the same time. I don't
Okay.
think we should change the project.
Okay.
It's just,
I
a
know
note.
what you, I know exactly what you're speaking
yeah,
of.
it's on
Yes.
the Fairfax Center side, or whatever it's called now.
Okay, any requests from the public or comments from the public on the consent, on the remaining items on the consent calendar? Cindy?
Hi, this is just a quick comment, and I feel silly bringing it up, but I'm going to anyway. On number 13, I just wanted to know, it says here, adoption of proclamation declaring September as, it actually says prostate cancer, and the what? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it was just a typo on the agenda and not on the actual
If you look
proclamation.
in the packet out
so-
there, it's in the proclamation, if you can see it out there. It's
Okay.
not as bad as the time that I announced the.
Okay, like I said, I just wanted to make
yeah,
sure it was just
I
a
know.
typo on this, so, okay, thank
In
you.
the past, I announced a pubic hearing, and I think that was worse than this, but the proclamation is correct, okay, if you look out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Michael?
Mayor, if you'd please pull 21 so we can have a discussion what the reach in the, I guess, partnership with the town might be with the Water Conservation District. Thank you.
Maybe I could just answer your questions quickly so that because we do have a full agenda. I mentioned this a few minutes ago when I was doing the council report. The flood district allocated, I think the number was collectively 29,000, 5,000 per member jurisdiction to have the Marin Corps come in and do creek maintenance, heavy debris, vegetation, and Fairfax was awarded, like all of the other towns, $5,000, and we are being awarded or being compensated or reimbursed $5,000 for work that we actually hired the Conservation Corps to come in and do. They removed a number of trees, in fact, in excess of $5,000. But we are being reimbursed, if the council votes on this, for that work. And that's the sum and substance of number 21.
Is that the same as the California Conservation Water Resource Board?
No, it's the North Bay Conservation Corps.
Okay, because you might be able to get additional funding. If you'll recall, from the California Conservation Resource Board, I was awarded a $1.9 million grant. And
Yeah,
that was
I got to
for
tell
just
you,
the creek.
I'm sure there are pots of money there. I have to tell you, the folks at Department of Public Works who are running the flood zone are seriously on top of grant opportunities. That's their sum and substance and their reality. So if there's a grant opportunity relating to flood, macro or micro,
No,
they're all over it.
Is strictly for the corridor of the creek, for a study from Town Hall to Lansdale with the restoration on my property. And that's where I had to reimburse them 25%, so approximately at the time $458,000. But it's still a pot of money of $1.9 million. There's additional money if you want to pursue this up to the interest of 10 years ago, and I had the public meeting for the Farm Bill. At that time, there was $22 billion to split up between the different states. I can't remember what part went to California, but that also went for restoration, conservation of our creeks and corridors.
I suggest take it up with the name of the gentleman actually was mentioned by Georgia just a few minutes ago, Jack Curley, who is
Okay,
the
no,
staffer on
I've
this.
spoken to Jack Curley and invited him to the county discussion for the Farm Bill, but if you're going to shepherd this for the town, there's different avenues to look at where there's a tremendous amount of money.
I'm not shepherding it for the town. I am, in a sense, the handmaiden of good fortune, bringing it back from the county to the town. We, in a sense, pay for, through our fee dollars, to have the county run this project. I bring issues to the flood zone non-advisory board that I sit on that are of concern to the council, to the community, and I'd be more than happy to put you and Jack more fully into conversation about the interstices of an important and I'm sure very complex funding opportunity.
Okay, because remember, within the scope too, I know you guys tabled it, but if the bridge for the country club is replaced, 100% is paid by the state and federal departments.
It's not on the agenda. I
know,
can't address
that
that.
would also address all this past story pipe erosion, and it benefits the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment on the consent calendar?
I'm not sure exactly which ones ended up getting pulled. I was speaking to someone, but I did want to just briefly make a comment on number 16 and 17, which are non-motorized transportation pilot program funded items. And what I wanted to say about it is these projects have had delays after delays after delays, and in some cases for good reason. But I think this was funded 4 maybe plus years ago, and I just wanted to urge the council, the plans and specs are going out, and then bids will go out, and there's a couple of more steps where the council will need to do approvals, and I just wanted to urge the council, if necessary, to hold special meetings to get these things moving. There has been several efforts from Washington to try to take back money that has not been used, and it would be a terrible, terrible thing if this money were lost, and so I want to urge you to get projects moving, get the money spent, and get the projects installed. Thank you.
Will do.
They're 5-year-old grants. That's how long they've been rattling around, so we'll get them done.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the consent calendar with the pulling of 6, 10, 17, 18, and 19.
So moved.
Motion Bragman, second. Reed, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, we'll move forward as amended. Why don't we go ahead and start with 6?
Okay. It's a small detail. Basically, it relates to the minutes of the last meeting and the project that was presented here. At that meeting, I said that signage but not street markings would be on Shemran Court, and it would be signage but not street markings. It's a small detail, and hopefully we can approve the minutes after that.
Okay, is there any public comment on that? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Get a motion to approve with that change? Motion O'Neill, second Bragman. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we approve those minutes as amended. Item number 10. Ryan, your question?
Yeah, I had brought this issue up to the previous town manager last year. I have a significant amount of time done with the building of websites and maintenance of websites, and I've come across the concepts of the differences in how people charge. To put it quickly, I think that we should look at saving money. I've done a couple questions and answer pieces with people, and I did this last year before I was elected on the council, proposed this to the town manager, and was flatly just rejected. And that's okay. And it's very possible that there's something here that is fantastic and I'm unaware of. But I think that I spoke to a gentleman today that has worked with me and my businesses in the past. I explained to him what we were paying as a town and if he thought that he might be able to save us money based on what is going on. He basically was able to go into the code of the website, which is the foundation of the framework, and recognize that the hours that were being spent per month were feasible based on the code. However, what he said to me is that if he was able to change the code to make it easier to do, he thinks he could half the work on a monthly basis, which basically was looking at, I don't know the exact figures, but I did get a conversation with him today, and it made me want to pull this out to get at least a presentation and at least a competitive bid, or at least a quick look at what we're paying for. If we can save $7,500 a year, or change, I mean, it's not a ton of money, but it's real money, and being able to compare apples to apples, I think it's just worth a small investigation. So I'd like to carry it over. I'd like to put it on the agenda for next month, along with a possible short presentation on what his findings were. And I'm not going to say that we need to hire this individual, but maybe we do need to bring these things out into the open to find out a little bit more what we're asking and what we're paying for.
Judy, is there any reason we couldn't do that?
No, I think it's always good to examine how you're spending your money. I would like to speak in support of this contract and Carol Golsh and what she's done for us and continues to do for us as a staff. She's does something almost every day for us, and I think we're getting her at a bargain, and it is up to $15,000. I would have to check with our finance director to see how close we came to that $15,000 over the year. But we don't have anybody on staff with those skills, and I was untrainable. They tried. I couldn't do it. I really appreciate her expertise. She gets things on the website quickly. She does and there's also the alternative that the council maybe doesn't want so much service. We could decrease what we ask of her. She puts up the council packet, the planning commission packet. She gets a lot of information on the website. I try very hard to keep our homepage fresh. That involves almost daily contact with her and she is proactive about telling me things that are out of date, that need to be changed, and I just find her really invaluable. But I commend you for examining it. We have other contracts on the consent calendar too. I didn't put dollar amounts on them, but her dollar amount, I think, is money well spent. I don't believe we're really, I don't have to check with Michael. I don't really believe we're spending the whole $15,000, but I'd be happy to go over what, those services are and hear what someone else says, certainly, always. She's been with us for a number of years now. She's helped us develop the website and build it in the first place. She's very familiar with it. She works with all different people on staff, not just me. She works with the planning department and other people, with Maria about events, and she's really integral to making this work. It's not to say somebody else couldn't do it, but at this point I think she'd be difficult to replace. But I'm certainly open to putting it on and telling you more information about it at the next meeting. Pardon? No.
Well, the concept here, and I've always been a believer in, dance with the girl that brung you, because at the end of the day, you may have a great service and a great product here, and I don't have enough information, and I think the fact that I was not given the information when I requested it before I was a council member really kind of put me on notice to say, hey, let's dig a little deeper and see. I don't know the hours that she puts in and how it's done, but I did have access to some really good information in comparing what these guys do with the town of Sebastopol. So there's a comparative people that they're already working with, and working with municipalities, they're able to lower rates. Like I said, all things being equal, it would just be a look of a little study on our end to better understand how it's working. And if it was even close enough but a little bit more expensive, obviously we stay with what we have. I just think that it's worth a little look.
Mayor?
Larry?
I think what would be interesting would be to hear what his consultant or his contact has to say about the code, because I think, as we go forward, this website is going to become sort of our station. It's going to become our brand in a sense. And we're going to be hanging video files on it pretty soon. I assume meetings, what we were talking about with GPIC, maybe video educational programs. So I think she has done a good job, because I was here when we first actually built the website, and it was built with a very old coding system. So it's like today you can get a very generic kind of coding system where anybody can build a website. So I know she had a lot of work throughs just to keep the continuity of that website going. But I would be interested in hearing what we can do to expand it, maybe simplify it, who knows? You know, but it's an important asset for the town, so I think it's worth looking at.
You're right, that we are using it more and more, and that's why I said
It's
if
the
if
portal.
cost-
It's
if the
become
cost-
really the portal,
Yeah.
rather than folks coming to the front desk.
Yes.
They go to the website. I
Yes.
mean, that's really what introduces us.
Right, and
So-
it's working the way it works for us now with staff, but there's always another way to do things. And
No, I think it's
your
come
responsibility
it's come
to
a
look at
long
that.
way. It's come a
Absolutely.
long way.
If I could
John?
add, looking at the financial statements for this period here, in May we paid, or in June we paid a May invoice for $750. It seemed to me that the monthly amount that we pay is about $750, and then she has additional amounts that she does for special projects, going in and updating pages, those sorts of things.
John?
Yeah, Mayor. I agree with a lot of your points, Larry, and also with yours, Ryan, but I think that going forward, I think it's really important to get a comprehensive idea of where we're going and all the different things that are involved. I mean, I think, your guy could probably tell a fair amount by looking at the code, and that's basically where we've come from. And there may well be a better way to design it at this point. I mean, I have done a couple of rudimentary, using the templates that they have these days, making Joomla sites and that kind of thing. And yeah, you can make a complex website like that, but is it really customer friendly? Sometimes, not always. But I think that's important to think about going forward, because this is the way that people are going to interact with our town, and they're going to learn about things that are going on this way. Hopefully it'll help people's experience with the town and, basically make it better all the way around for the government as staff and for the citizens of Fairfax. Maybe the thing to do is to develop not only, a look at what the site is there, but a task list of what our current contractor is doing on a daily basis and, in a general way throughout the year, so that, another bid, if you will, can be looked at that. And also, get a list of where we're going in the future to see, where are these videos going to hang and what's involved in maintaining that. So, so we can get an apples to apples look and a second bid, which is always a good thing.
We have a specific process for when we're actually putting something out to bid, and I'm not sure if we're crossing that line by bringing this to the public in the next meeting, or if we just, I'm not sure what the process is. I mean, we can certainly carry over this discussion and not approve this tonight.
Yeah, it's, we're renewing Larry Kenning's contract here. He's worked with us for a number of years. Carol now has been with us, and we do that until we, I guess, come up with a bigger project, or we want to change horses, or we're changing vision, or it's just time to look out. And it sounds like maybe this is a time to look at the website and what its function is and what we're paying and where we're going. I mean, that's reasonable, I think, to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian?
One last question is, I read the contract that we were talking about, and there's a 30-day cancellation. It's not a yearly thing. So technically, if we wanted to, we could, am I right, carry it over, approve her for a monthly basis, just so we don't have any break in what's going on. We can ask the people that I've worked with and other people to come in and give us ideas for what they think our website could be and where we might go. The people that build these things are way ahead of us technologically, and what they're doing is they're studying and learning and going to conferences to find out what is trending and what is coming. I don't think that's very much of our expertise, but if we can get an idea from them or a presentation format on where they can take us, if we were to buy in on that and figure out how we wanted to do it, we could give her a 30-day notice in 6 months when we're ready to go. So I don't necessarily think we need to not approve it. I just want to, I want to make sure that's correct. We could cancel, give her a 30-day notice and get on a new bus if we have to, right? Well, if that's the case, I would make the motion to go ahead and approve the renewal of the contract, provided we had a 30-day cancellation. That way we don't lose any overlap and we don't ruffle any feathers at the same time.
Okay, we got a motion, O'Neill, second?
Second.
Second, Reed, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I didn't do public comment. Is there a public comment on this item? Sorry, Mark. Thank you for the reminder.
Mark Bell, 63 Dominga. I don't know as far as the billing, but like Joomla and the other things that John mentioned are called CMS or content management systems, and the town has a lot of content that has to be managed in a system. So I don't know what the original website was built in. I know with my own site that I did in Dreamweaver. It takes me like weeks, if not months, to figure out how to add to it in a way due to certain limitations that I have with it that you would not have in a CMS system. And the amount of plugins that are available that are constantly being updated, et cetera, make everything a lot faster to do, a lot smoother to do, and especially as far as adding videos, you know, you're sticking them on a server someplace in the ethersphere or whatever, and they're there. You can have your own station that you can get through Vimeo or other sites that are available. So much easier to put all of that into a CMS type of system. So I'm not sure what's being used, but I think it's a good idea to look at it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Cindy, did you have a public comment on this one?
Yeah, I feel really awkward about this, and I feel like what I'm going to say maybe isn't the most professional thing to say, but there's something that feels really icky to me about what just happened. And, you know, I have to admit, I mean, looking at this agenda item, the first thing off the top of my head is saying, oh yeah, $15,000 is a lot of money. And I certainly understand questioning, you know, whether there might be a way to reduce that amount, if that indeed is the amount. But kind of like what Judy was saying, and I don't know Carol, I mean, I use the website sometimes, I don't know all the technicalities involved. But there's something that doesn't feel right to me if we have somebody that's been doing this for a number of years and doing a good job to just suddenly bring it up in the meeting when you're talking about renewing a contract, to suddenly say, oh, maybe somebody else could come in, or maybe we could. Something about that just doesn't feel right to me. And I guess if there are some concerns about what Carol is maybe not doing, or if there's some, you know, I just feel like I would like to see her involved more in that process and see if she has been doing a good job and she has had the contract for a while, if there's some way to continue that with her. And then, you know, maybe down the road, if she can't do it, then maybe look at the options. But just in a meeting, especially where she's not here, I just don't feel comfortable with that, the way that came up.
Okay. Ryan?
Well, Cindy, if I can address it to you directly. Me being the newest council member, I have a lot of homework to do, and I like to do the homework so that I can make decisions. But people that I talked to when I was out campaigning, and people you talk to all the time, including yourself, have made many comments about how we need to have money to fix sidewalks. Well, if you took 100 projects and cut them in half on costs, I don't see decisions with relationships in regard to business as anything more than business. She can be my mother. If my mother is charging me twice as much as someone else for less services, I'm going to give the job to the person that's going to benefit the community and not something to me personally. So a lot of the things that the way I will look at concepts are, let's put all the information out on the table. Let's share it with everybody. Let's weigh a decision of a relationship, because it's important not to whore yourself out to anybody who's going to provide a service just for a lower cost. And I think the council previously found that out when they decided to outsource the business licenses. But at the end of the day, our job is to save money, because it's your money that we're saving so we can fix the very sidewalks that you've asked us to address. So personally, I'm sure she's a very nice lady and is providing good service, but I wouldn't think I was doing my job for you, the citizen, if we didn't look at every contract that we have and ask, are we getting the best for our dollar? And that's where I stand.
John, go ahead.
I agree with some of what you're saying, Ryan, but I also agree with you that there is a personal relationship here, and while this person does not actually live in Fairfax, I don't know where she lives, but it is somebody who is a part of our community because she's working on something that is a part of our community. And I'm not saying like, oh, say, oh, well, you've got a pink slip here, we found somebody cheaper. But if we have a conversation, as you were talking about, Ryan, with all the things there, I mean, she can say, oh, well, I've been learning about the CMS systems, and, we can work that into the thing. But, structurally, this website has old code, and it's not a CMS system as far as I understand. And sometimes you have to do a lot of work to get to a CMS system, and it may well be that she has that knowledge of how to get there and says, well, that's going to cost you X to get there, which, your guy would probably agree if that's physically what it would be. But to have the conversation, you need all the information there and all the people in the room talking about it. So I think you're right about that.
Thank you. And unfortunately, we are a public entity. This is kind of the only time we have an option to review these contracts. It's not something that we can do privately, unfortunately, because of the way. And I think people understand that when they work for a town to some degree. Thank you, though. Okay, I believe we had a motion, O'Neill, second Reed. Is that right? Yep. Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote again. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Where are we at? Consent calendar item number 17.
Yes, 17, this is the resolution number 1258, and this is about releasing plans and specifications for the Sir Francis Drake Bike Lane Striping Project. And there were, I gotta find my notes here. There were a few clarifications and little adjustments to the plans there. I mean, I don't want to take a long time doing this, but there are some existing problems that aren't in the plans right now. For instance, in front of the little shopping center that has a women's fitness center, and I don't know how to name that shopping center, but it's to the, yeah, it's yeah, in between, sorry? It's in the county jurisdiction, no, it's not that one. Actually, it is in between St. Rita's and IGA Market. Oh, okay. And there, it's a little strip section there, and there's some parking on Sir Francis Drake right now where just after the driveway where you enter that going in a westerly direction, people park right up to the driveway, which is technically legal because it's not painted red or anything like that, but that's right where the bike lane is, and that basically it means that bicycles either have to move into traffic or go through the parking lot, which is private property. So if a red curb was added to that point to which a car could park and have the bike lane going around it so that there's the 7 feet for the car and the 5 feet for the, yeah, it's certainly possible, but you'll lose a parking place or a parking place and a half. I guess in front of St. Rita's directly, it looks like the project extends out of the right-of-way onto St. Rita's project. I don't know if that's worked out. You know, maybe that was a question for staff before the meeting. And also in the if in a eastbound on the eastern end of the project, which is basically where it comes down to Klaus, there's a bike lane that leads directly onto Drake, which doesn't have bike lanes continuing from there. And in a previous meeting about this, I brought up a possibility to have that sign to indicate that there's a bike route on Broadway. So, you know, there'd be, right. Yeah, and as it's currently drawn, it just continues in a straight line straight onto Drake, where there is not enough right-of-way there for a bike lane to continue. So I worry about the continuity of that. And, you know, not that I want to hold up the going to bid process, but, you know, it really needs to be addressed in a way that works so it's functional.
Are we able to adopt those changes in before we? Okay. Okay. Other comments or questions from council on this item? Larry?
Just, are the crosswalks getting restriped, or is this just the bike lanes? Okay, because there's just a question, again, some of the crosswalks are not ADA compliant, but it's not part of this project, I guess. Okay. Yeah. I was just going to move approval, but.
Let's see if there's any public comment on it first. Any public comment on item 17?
I was just wondering if I could ask a question, and I think it has to do with this, but I'm really confused at this point. There's been some question, I've had some questions about what our town ordinance is about bicycles on sidewalks, and I'm just wondering, since we're talking about, bike lanes and sidewalks and crosswalks and all that, if anybody really knows what the situation is, because I know we do have some signs up, especially on Center Boulevard, saying that there's no bicycle riding on the sidewalk, yet that happens all the time. And then I know that there are some places where it's probably not safe not to ride on the sidewalk, and other times where it's a disaster to have the bikes on the sidewalk. And I know California law, does allow for it, but it also allows for towns to say there are certain areas where you can't do it, and I'm just really confused. Nobody here seems to know whether we're allowed to ride bicycles on sidewalks here in Fairfax. So,
thank you, Chief. Yeah.
Bicycle riding is not allowed on the sidewalk. They have to obey the rules of the road. Same as a car. A car cannot drive on the sidewalk unless they're going in and out of a driveway, so a bicycle cannot. The signs that were on Center Boulevard were on private property at the fair and sale.
Jessica, are you taking that down? we had a lot of discussion about this online, so
The signs that were at fair and sale sidewalk are private property, so the property owner themselves place signs saying no bicycle riding because it's private property, except for the city portion of the sidewalk.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on this? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. And we need a motion to adopt Resolution 1258.
I would so move to adopt Resolution 1258 with the amendments that we talked about.
Second.
Motion Reed, second Bragman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And you wanted to pull item 18 as well. Did you have a question?
This is an admirable resolution, I think, and it's basically concerning a California Homeless Bill of Rights. However, it seems kind of city-oriented in that it talks about sleeping on the street. It doesn't talk about sleeping in vehicles, and it doesn't talk about sleeping in open space. And since it's basically discrimination based on the fact that somebody is either, is basically not sleeping in a residence, I thought perhaps it would be appropriate to add language to that effect.
I don't think there's a consensus in this town, and I would welcome the chief, and I'm sure the fire chief if he were here as well. I don't think that there's a cognizable right that we want to recognize for people living in our open space for the protection of them and for the protection of the larger community from the fire danger. So I can tell you that the language is, in a sense, national. When the mayor asked me to look into this, what we had in front of us was a Rhode Island template, and in large measure, this is the Rhode Island law with a few tweaks and twiddles in there to make it a little bit better reading, perhaps. But what I'm gathering about this issue is that this is an issue of national concern, and that we are adding our small but active voice into something that we hope will grow, as we often feel about these matters, into something larger. So I think if you want to have the conversation about whether there's a constitutional right to sleep in our open space or in cars, that's a conversation that this document and this national proposal was not figuring on And it's certainly beyond the ken of what I have been thinking about in drafting and what the mayor asked me to work on.
Okay, I guess I was interpreting this by the title of it, which, or the description in the first paragraph, where it was talking about it was seeking to keep people from being discriminated against because that is the reality of their living situation, unfortunately. And I completely agree that, especially with fire danger and things like that, that you can't, by doing this, be saying, okay, well, we're condoning that behavior. But, perhaps, I mean, we have, an ordinance against sleeping in vehicles in Fairfax. But at the same time, if somebody is sleeping in a vehicle, that's sometimes, a safety net, as not a very good one, but that's being used as a safety net for an individual, much as the same as a homeless shelter would be. And so, since the resolution is basically directed at discrimination, perhaps that is acceptable. I don't know.
Without addressing the merits of the point, I think the community would have to weigh in on that because I dare say the chief would have some points on the matter. I think members of the community, while we are a generous community, often beyond the imagination of those of us who hold the truths of our federal and state constitution to the highest standard. I think members of the community might be concerned about expanding that right to those who wish to live in vehicles on their street, in front of their house. I don't know what the answer to that would be, but I think if you wanted to add that, we would have to table this and really soul search in our community to discover whether that was true.
I work in downtown San Rafael, right across from the Ritter Center, so it's sort of homeless central in Marin County, and I think, it's a good idea to protect the rights of any suspect class, and I think, to a certain extent, homeless people and homelessness has become a class, and I intend to vote to approve this. What bothers me about it is that it seems to recognize homelessness as a given fact. And instead of addressing homelessness, which is to eliminate it, it seeks to protect it and enshrine it as a class, as a permanent legal recognition of a fact that is not a fact. It is a fact that is the result of policy decisions that are being made, abandoning housing and abandoning investment, just like abandoning investment in infrastructure, abandoning investment in building homes for people. So, yeah, I intend to vote for this, but it's a sad day when we have to recognize homelessness and homeless people as a permanent class in the richest society on the planet. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Brian.
That is a tough act to follow. And one of the reasons I'm proud to be representing Fairfax, because that type of insight is should be a beacon for many people. But I digress back to a little bit more what we're dealing with. And I agree with you, Larry, and I thought that was really well said. To address what John said about certainly the issues of open space and cars, there's in the Bill of Rights here in front of me in item number 1, it really kind of takes that all away for me, because it's saying that number 1 has the right to use and move freely in public spaces, including but not limited to public sidewalks, public parks, public transportation, and public buildings. And the key phrase that I'm catching here is the next part of the sentence that says, in the same manner as any other person. So I wouldn't be able to sleep in our open space without the chief being able to enforce some rules. And I don't think we're asking anything else here. I think what we're asking in what I'm reading here is to be treated as everybody else would be treated, with no special privilege, but just to be, you know, if there's no one allowed in this park after dark, it's the same for me as it is for that person, and I think that kind of takes away some of those concerns.
And I think that the only place where it talks about the status of living on the streets is in the definition of what it means to be, their definition of housing status means that they don't have a fixed or regular residence. I think that as it is a definition, I think that doesn't change the resolution to, in any way to include that people who are, you know, tentatively housed or living in their, you know, sleeping in their cars or on the, you know, I mean, that language is not actually part of the resolution that we're passing. It's certainly an issue that would be more than happy to bring up as a public conversation about how do we govern in a scenario where we're getting more and more of us are precariously housed and losing our homes. So I don't know if there's really an alteration. It's not, I mean, because the language that you're talking about is not actually in the resolution itself, I don't know.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess that's pretty much where I was coming from, was kind of a place of compassion for these as people, and looking at this as basically an anti-discrimination piece, but you know, if that's the wording, that's the wording.
I'd be honored to move this resolution and pass it on to our state legislature, and also to encourage our fellow sister cities and in the county to adopt a similarly worded resolution.
Let me get public comment on that. Public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We've got motion Weinsoff, second O'Neill. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. 19 you also wanted taken, John. I did too. That was one I wanted taken too, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I guess this is because there's a brand new Good Earth sign, and it looks spiffy and just painted this, last few months next to our Fairfax sign, which has been there for a while, and, as much as Fairfax has been a while. And so the idea is to move it more into town so it's farther away from the Good Earth sign, and put it down, all the way down kind of by the theater.
No, actually, Judy, this is an item that I promoted, and Judy and I and Jim discussed it, and I think the memo might be a tad unclear. So let me explain what my thinking is on this.
Yeah.
And then, we can discuss that if you wish. For 16 and a half years, as I stop on the corner of Willow and Sir Francis Drake, whether coming, going, any which way, I and my neighbors have discussed the intolerably shabby sign that inadequately announces our great town. A very iconic sign, however, as we know, is at the beginning of the parkade. And if you see pictures of Fairfax, they always seem to shoot that beautiful with the redwoods right behind it. The Good Earth came along and created a grand monument to itself, which only accentuated the fact that this shabby, inadequate, half-baked, and soon-to-break-down sign really is diminished even further. Our town, while it starts pretty much a little before the Willow, intersection there, really the heart and soul of the town begins not at that corner under those cropped redwoods, in the back of a supermarket, before a hill that's often filled with broom. That's not our town before it hits those unfortunate backside of an apartment building. Our town, really the heart and soul, the business district, starts really right there at the iconic sign. So I thought that it's time to address this issue. That sign, which is there now, does not announce our town. What it does is it alerts people that there's going to be a meeting of the Planning Commission or this council. And so I went to staff and I said, well, could we incorporate the two? And what I'm getting back, and jump right in, is we can amend, add appropriately and tastefully the current Fairfax sign in a manner that will continue to alert the folks in the community. Really, what we're talking about is really most of the people that would see it, except for a few apartment houses on the right-hand side, are going to see it when they come to the parkade. Now, I know there's an overwhelming in Fairfax that if a tree falls in our town, it should remain there until the angels themselves come and take it away, and that nothing should ever change whatsoever for any reason at all. However, in this modest case, with this shabby sign, which can be replaced just a little bit down the road, I asked the council's indulgence for an aesthetic improvement to our community.
So long story short, you want to take down the old sign and put a newer sign next to the already existing sign? Or do you want to take the already existing nice sign and move it? You don't want to do that.
Staff has informed me that we can amend the existing iconic sign to include a drop-down that would allow for the notification of the Planning Commission of the Council, the sole function of the
Sure.
sign.
And the people on the east end of town have to come into town to figure it out.
I suspect, since we've had a long conversation here about websites, that
And they're all here.
Yes.
Yep.
The people in town are not relying upon that sign. It's a courtesy, it's a historical remnant, but it is not the way I think people understand when their commission and their council is meeting. And they will see it when they come right into the middle of town on their way home, as they would now, perhaps a tenth of a mile later.
Yeah. Well, my suggestion was going to be to fix up the old sign and give it a paint job or something that it probably needs, because it's been shabby here for 17 years that you're talking about. You know, who knows? Maybe it'll still not look very good next to the Good Earth sign. I don't know.
How could it possibly?
Yeah.
That is a grand
It's a hard
monument to a
act to
grand
follow,
store.
and they've got the deep pockets.
Well, it's a beautiful
appears,
monument.
yeah.
They did a terrific job.
Whatever, I'm open to.
Other council member comments? Ryan?
I think that the sign that lets you know you're in Fairfax is right when you cross the border, and it's a green sign on the right-hand side as you're driving into town, and it even tells you there's 7,500 of us here. I think that the concept of seeing another sign right after you hit Suffield, I think it is, on the left-hand side that you were talking about now, I mean, although it helps remind me I'm supposed to go to a meeting tonight on my way home, I think David's got a decent point. If you could create a sign that has a drop-down, almost like a chain that would hang below the existing, you're talking about the existing Fairfax, the Redwoods, by leaving that one and then having something drop down from there, that you could hang on a hook and have that look exactly like the Fairfax sign says Planning Commission tonight, 7 o'clock, take it off the hook. Town Council tonight, take it off the hook. I think that would be very well received. And I'm more for that natural feel of wood carving as opposed to the generic engineered paint concept. I think it speaks volumes for who we are by having something that's more log cabin style than plastic metal feel. So I would support that.
Okay, can I get clarification? I'm confused. This memo says moving the existing sign. Okay, so we're not talking about moving the existing sign, we're talking about removing the existing sign and adding the notifications onto the lawn.
Lifting up the existing sign, adding, as Ryan described, a couple of hooks so we can put the meeting announcements on the one existing in the parkade.
Okay. Other council member comments on that? Any comments from the public? Come on down, Cindy.
You know, I hate to say it, but see, this is one of the things that really kind of boggles my mind, that we could spend so much time and energy on something like this. I'd like to know how much it's going to cost to move signs or remove signs or paint them or do whatever it is you're talking about. And I feel like, you know, if the sign's been there for so many years, I live on the east end of town. I mean, I feel like leave the sign where it is. Really, I think we've got more important things to worry about, and I'm not concerned if Good Earth has a bigger and prettier sign than our town sign. I mean, I feel like that's just to me, this is one of these things that I think is really a waste of time. So that's just my 2 cents. But I would like to know what the costs involved are, you know, in doing something like this.
Thank you.
The project could be done by our current crew on their regular work schedule, so there wouldn't be any real cost, except the screws maybe in the chain link, you know, but it wouldn't be any real cost to it.
With that, I will make a motion to remove the dilapidated, tired sign from its current location, give it a good burial, and to adjust the the iconic Fairfax sign to accommodate the notification for the Planning Commission and the council as it does now.
Motion Wensoff.
Second.
Second O'Neill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I don't know if that was if that was abstaining.
This point any longer. I don't want to belabor it much longer. It is also used for announcements for the town picnic and creek cleanup and things like that, and signs are made for that. And so maybe if provision, you know, hopefully things can adapt to the new location too.
Okay, I believe that was, would you
Yes,
abstain, or
that's a
you,
yes.
okay. All right, any opposed, seeing none opposed, that motion carries. I believe we have finished our consent calendar. I know we've got a public hearing and there are people here for it, but let's take a really, really quick break and we'll get back to it. Thank you.
So in discussing the situation along the property line that she shares with 7-Eleven, it became apparent that the best way to stop the noise from 12 to 6 in the morning or any other noise in the evening, which occurs whether or not you have 24-hour access, is a sound wall. So we discussed the merits of that, and at that time, we can hear from Ms. Moreno tonight, she seemed amenable to the idea that yes, that would stop the sound. The current fence that was built by the 7-Eleven is that 6 foot going right out to the sidewalk. If you look at the other side of the fence on Ms. Moreno's property, she actually has some lattice work that starts from the face of her property, her building, going back along that side, and that lattice pops up to about 8 feet. So we discussed how that profile would help where her bedrooms are in the back of the building to mitigate sound going over the 6 feet into her bedroom sleeping area. And that my recommendation would be to allow that 6 foot wall to bump up to 8 feet from the face of her building back, which would also, if she took it all the way to the back of her property line, mitigate any intruders on the other end of 7-Eleven that apparently come along to do natural activities. And likewise, allow her to go 6 feet all the way up to the front of the curb. I coyly did not discuss with her where I was going in terms of who would be responsible for that wall, but that it came up. I cautioned her that I wanted to keep the discussion just to the merits of the sound wall, independent of who might be responsible for that sound wall. And then after we discussed the merits, I went on to talk about how the front of her property might benefit from being allowed to have a 6 foot height variance because, in fact, as she's pointed out in the public record, young kids go in for Slurpees with their skateboards and they're coming around in front. And as we've heard at the 4 meetings at the Planning Commission, your appeal hearing in July, that she lives in a very noise-intensive spot. You know, there's a fire station across the street, there's a youth center, there's a park, there's this building, there's the police station. So she's inundated with noise all the time. And so to really arrest the situation and provide her with 24-hour peace of mind, this seems like it would be an opportunity to just deal with the sound issue for Mrs. Moreno's property. I see the 7-Eleven as having done what it could to address the issues along the way through the public process that we've had to date. We have the police report that in fact the occurrences went down over a certain period of time. It's quite possible they could go back, they could go up higher if more people get used to going in there at night. It's possible. Even if you were to uphold the appeal, she's still going to be dealing with sound issues in the future. So it seems to me this might be a win-win. It is not, I'm sure, what Ms. Moreno would like in terms of who has the burden of implementing that solution, but that's nonetheless staff's recommendation, that you uphold, so you deny the appeal, and through your de novo rights, grant Ms. Moreno a fence/wall height variance for 6 foot in the front of her property to the face of the house, and on the property line sharing with the 7-Eleven, allow it at the face of the house back to the back rear of the property line to go up to 8 feet. And to cut it short, we said we recommend you leave it up to staff, administrative review of that wall. You know, they can look quite nice. She's going to have to deal, if you go this direction, you know, with a gate for the cars, a gate for the pedestrians, yada, yada, yada. But that's our recommendation.
Thank you very much. Are there questions and comments from council members on this?
Very intriguing.
David?
From your expertise, which is vast on matters like this, and of course we'll be hearing from you, Ms. Moreno, about this, and you're going to be the ultimate arbiter for me on this. Is 8 feet enough?
I believe so. I believe where it bumps up, the lattice bumps up now, and through the discussions with Ms. Moreno and her explanation of where her bedroom is, and also having observed not only on that day, but walking back from these meetings, where the noise is coming from. It's really, there's a parking spot at the front of the building, sort of at the right side, where that, you can, sort of the most convenient for some kids to come in and park and hang out, and it bleeds around the corner of that building. I think the 6 foot would address that, and then any cars that come up during the rest of the day in those 2 spaces that are now blocked out after midnight, that would alleviate the sound from going up. Sound usually travels up. So I think that 8 foot bump back would be the kicker to really stop the noise at night. So I think the 6 foot variance in the front and allowing it to go to 8 from the face of the building back would do the job. And actually not present itself as too fortress-like. And there's some very nicely done walls around, say Sir Francis Drake, you know, going for some of those homes that are trying to mitigate the traffic noise and whatnot. It can be done quite nicely.
Recommending that we waive all fees for that.
Of course.
Other, Larry?
You know, the one thing I've talked to staff about before this is I actually filed a directed appeal from the first decision. And I think that there's no time limit on hearing a directed appeal. So, I mean, I think we're still in that process, and I think the fee for this appeal should also be refunded to them, no matter what the outcome of this thing is.
Forgive me for not mentioning that. We discussed it last time, and I think you were pretty amenable to going in that direction.
Okay, so,
yes.
And I'll reserve until we get into the hearing.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is basically what I was asking for at the last meeting was, you know, go and look and see if there's something else we can do, and just basically at the end of the day, you want to go to sleep. And, you know, it's nice to be able to sleep, and really that's what we're trying to do here.
Ryan, do you have any?
No, I'm interested to hear from Ms. Moreno. I think of all of you, I've heard this more than anybody, and I've weighed in a lot. But I have, from the Planning Commission stages where I was on there to here, I'm very well schooled as where we are at this point. My goal is always to have found a win-win scenario, and I'd like to hear from them before I really tell you where I'm at.
We start with the appellant, is that right? Misty, do you want to come up? We're opening the public hearing, starting with you. Come on. Yeah. Thank you.
I have lost my voice, excuse me. I actually am hoping that what I have to say isn't too disjointed. I didn't get this packet or manuscript until last night. Speaking of icky, I was at a farm, a working farm with 10 kids today and rushed home. I haven't had a shower yet. And I'm sick, but we all know teachers aren't allowed to be sick in September. There's several things I want to address. I went through the packet, Exhibit D, the signatures collected from 7-Eleven. The only ones that signed it that were on Park Road were beyond the Women's Center. I'm looking at the ones that had addresses. There was Fawn Ridge, Sir Francis Drake Scenic, Porteous, Myrna, Cascade, Wood Lane. They're not within the noise range, and I'm doubtful that many of them will use it after midnight on a regular basis. In a town this size, we do have one that does not share a residential property line. I've researched, and there is only one 24-hour convenience store in Marin that has a residential property shared line. I have not talked to them yet. I'm not interested in seeing if it's the same tenants when it became 24-hour, and to research the property value of that home if it's changed hands. The other thing I found, we just did a refi, so I had an appraisal. And with that, I was told that it would, most likely, I would be losing over 20% property value being next to 24-hour store. That's a big issue to me. I've already lost enough property value with this swing that we've done. I do have signatures here from people who are directly related. Park Road, Bolinas Road. They are homeowners, residents, they're professional people, and they're voters. We have a small business owner, a nurse, the pantry coordinator for the Marin Food Bank, civil servant, a retired civil servant, a marine biologist who works at the Bay Aquarium, a teacher, and an electrician. These are people who live here and vote here. And tonight I heard, speaking of the pride of Fairfax and being proud of who we are, and that is still where I question if this is, you know, we also have the best town in Marin. Do we take care of our neighborhoods, of our population, to give them the best quality of life? I'm confused as to what the town gains by making it 24 hours. In a town our size, I think the one that's 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes away should suffice. It's not ruffling any feathers. In going over this packet, I found council members and commissioners and other citizens who used words like cause for concern. Are we a 24-hour town? Do we protect our neighbors and their quality of life? When we bought our property, it was with full disclosure that the municipality was there, the fire department was there, and we shared a property line with a store that was 7-Eleven. It was open from 7-Eleven. I never had any complaints about 7-Eleven. They went 6 to midnight. The only complaints and problems we have, I have to thank the chief and the police department. There was a lot of illicit things going on in those parking places next to our driveway. That's totally been abated since the police department has stepped up their presence there. That's made that much more. I mean, my husband used to take pictures of dealing going on next. That's all gone. Thank you, Chief, for that. I went through the calls. A lot of the calls that were no merit for noise doesn't mean that people weren't there before the officer could get there. Like I said, a lot of times we just go out and ask them to please move. It's quicker and it's easier for us to go back to sleep. Also, I think a lot of the officer-initiated ones, which were warrant arrests or outstanding warrants or license, I think those should also be considered in you're having that type of people show up in that area. I think a 24-hour store in Corte Madera, we can all agree would most likely not draw the same type of people that we might in Fairfax. I forgot to bring my calendar because I do write down what happened. Some of the night deliveries still come, but usually before 11, that's not a big deal to me. The one night, I woke up to hear this huge hissing sound. I mean, it woke me up. It's not like a release of pressure or something. It was unbelievably loud. I walked over in my slippers and found a guy, the little box under the light, and I guess it was releasing pressure. I have no idea. His truck said Nuco. He had earplugs on, and when I said he pulled one out, and I said, "Do you know what time it is?" It was 11:30, and he ran off at me using every adverb and adjective started with an F and ended with an ing. I was in such shock. I was just blown away. These kind of things can happen and happen more. This weekend, the car alarm went off at 1:20 in the morning. You know, I think the kind of things aren't going to happen if they're not open. And if they are open during those hours, they can happen more. I've been awake, unfortunately, not being able to go back to sleep at 4 a.m. and when I'm awake, I can hear the ding when the door opens. It doesn't bother me when I'm asleep. But I laid awake one night, and that door didn't open from 4 o'clock to 5:12 in the morning. I'm betting that between 3:30 and 5, you could count on less than these fingers how many times. I don't know. I think this is a company thing they want to do. I don't know how much it's good for them, but I don't see where it is contributing to our town. To what advantage does the town of Fairfax have? And to what inconvenience to the people who live there? The people that signed this all had problems with it. Only one door I knocked on did not sign it. It's a woman who has ill health and she likes to go there late at night. Everybody else I talked to signed it. And they're all in that area. They're all on this end of Park or on Bolinas and above me in Bolinas because the noise does travel at 200. Looking through my scattered notes. I didn't make copies, but I would like to give this to you. You know, and Sammy had brought up, I never complained about the fire department. Of course I didn't. They were there. They were there before I was there. That was full disclosure. But also, the store was called 7-Eleven and was open 7-Eleven. I had every right to believe that that's what they stood for. That was their name and that was their hours. And going over this, researching property value and the fact that Marin County there's no other one except the Twin Cities market that is in a residential. I realize this is on the edge. It's not totally downtown. It's on the edge of the commercial and it's in the municipality and residential. You know, the house we have is a cottage built in 1911, was brought over by ferry from scraps from the 06 house cottages that they built in Golden Gate Park to house people. Needless to say, the floors were gone. It was held up by rotting 2x4s, no walls, and we've spent a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make it a home. And I consider Fairfax my home. I grew up in San Anselmo, and on the house my dad grew up in, and we had chickens and ducks and rabbits, and I walked to Fairfax every week to buy my feed because Tom had a feed store downtown. This is my home, and I'm imploring you that we voted for to please consider the humanity involved in this. To have this convenience for a handful that may need it or may not need it, I feel like you're cutting us under in order to do that. And I'm imploring you to consider what we have to say. Who can I give this to?
Could you address the mitigations that planning has recommended for us here?
Well, I feel like we've been through a lot of mitigations. When it started, Sammy said he had customers waiting outside at 5 a.m. And I said, well, then open, or at 6 a.m. when he arrived. I said, then open at 5 a.m. That didn't bother me. Somebody else suggested leaving them open to 2, well, they would have the most of their business, and then closing at 2 a.m. I was okay with that. I'm trying to meet, but to have them open all night when it's the places that we raise our families, it's our sanctuary after work. It just isn't a blend to me. And I don't see who gains. How does the town gain by them being open?
Can you address the mitigations that have been recommended?
Those were the first recommendations. I talked to Mr. Moore. He witnessed some of the noise issues that we have there. Noise travels. So when people are slamming doors and standing outside talking in front of the store, we hear them. And very often it is people on their way. You know, we have the famous tri-bar area, and now we have something open all night they can walk to, and their voices are raised. They've been in a party atmosphere all night. This isn't going to stop. When I had asked, when the first mention of a wall came up, they said there should have been a privacy fence there. And I asked, well, I was the one that brought it up. What about a sound wall? And I was kind of like poo-pooed, like I was asking too much. I would like them not to be, I don't think it's necessary for them to be open all night. I don't think they're getting enough from it. The town's not getting enough from it. It's just not that much of an advantage. I implore you to not make it my neighborhood a 24-hour. And I'm very concerned about the loss of property value. That's huge to me, especially if I have no say in it.
Thank you. Let's take other public comment. Is there other public comment?
Does it boggle your mind?
Okay, let's bring it back to the council. David?
Nothing's changed, in my opinion, since July. I support the appellant in this matter and ask that the 7-Eleven be closed between 12 and 6. If she had moved to the house knowing that it was a 24-hour store, this wouldn't be a conversation we'd be readily having. You would have known. But as you say, you moved here with the knowledge of a store whose very name speaks to more limited hours. And indeed, this is a residential community. We struggle in this community to improve and maintain the quality of life for our residents. For mere modest, if I may say, mercantile interests, it's not worth putting a neighborhood through the aggravation. And I must say, perhaps I'm terribly biased because my wife, like you, is a school teacher, but I think that your arguments are so logical, there's not even a question in my mind that as much as we thank you for operating a very well-run and extremely professional store, and we honor the hard work that you put in and all of the time and effort to make a going concern. In this case where you are abutting a neighborhood and where you're changing the hours from what it was significantly from when she bought the home, she and her husband, it's just not a hard call for me. I would uphold the appeal.
Other council member comments? Larry?
Very tough call, I think. You know, when you ask what are the benefits to the community, I think, you know, the benefits, there are some benefits to the community to the extent that it's a place some of the residents can go who may need supplies late at night, who may be working a swing shift and don't get off until, you know, late at night. On the other hand, you know, your comments are definitely well taken, I think. You know, it's your home. It's bordering a residential neighborhood. And it's creating, you know, it's causing a disturbance to you. So it's, these are very tough decisions. You know, we had a similar situation in Fairfax a long time ago where Moro's Pizza is. That used to be a place called Shortstop. And it was like 7-Eleven, and they decided to go to being a 24-hour store on their own. They didn't go through the planning process. They felt once they got their use permit, that was it. They could do whatever they wanted to do. And the town actually took them up to the Court of Appeals. Or they actually took the town to the Court of Appeals when the town said, no, you can't change your hours. You know, we gave you a limited use permit, you've got to stick with that use permit. The trouble I have with this case, as opposed to the Shortstop case, is you've got the 7-Eleven that has gone through the process, through an elaborate public hearing process, and, you know, seems to want to work it out as best they can. They've done everything that's been asked of them. And, you know, I've been in the store, I'm sure you've been in the store, and everybody likes the guys in the store. So it's a difficult decision for me, I got to tell you. So, I mean, I'm kind of going through it as I'm sitting up here. And don't take this the wrong way. Do you have double pane windows in the house?
But it's summer. I like my windows open.
Okay.
And yes, it's sometimes, not often. There's been times in the winter. The winter months, you know, people aren't outside.
Will you come up to the microphone when you talk so we can get it on record and we can hear you?
Sorry. Yes, we do have double pane windows. We now have walls and insulation in that place. We do have double pane windows. Sometimes that isn't enough. But all summer long, I've worked really long, hard hours with the summer program that I teach in. And I want my bedroom window open, and that's where I sometimes get woken up. Sometimes with the window closed. So I've had my husband get up and go out and ask people to move on. You know, to hang out. I guess sometimes they'll be right at the corner where the fence is, right by our driveway.
And the other thing, and just to show you how tortured I am about it, because, I mean, I did file the directed appeal because it's definitely, you know, it's an important decision for us, I think. You know, is the fact that, you know, even though you can't trace every one of these calls to 7-Eleven, it's somewhat of a magnet just because it's there for activity. And, you know, it attracts activity, business activity, customers, whomever, that's going to be up, that will be up and about at all hours, you know, to patronize the store or that are out and about. So I'm not as confident that the small number of noise disturbances are the only thing that we should be looking at. There were a lot of calls near this location, and I know our computer system, the CAD system, is maybe assigning this address just because there's folks getting pulled over in that area, so they get, you know, that address gets tagged. But, you know, when I look at it, it's like no matter what, there's a lot of calls in that area. You know, do residential neighbors deserve a break? Just, you know, a break from that type of activity 24/7, you know? And I mean, I would like to hear from the 7-Eleven folks if they want to weigh in, you know. I would like to hear both sides too, so.
I'm Raj Uppal from 7-Eleven, 150 Bellini's Road. And we have done everything in our power to agree with our neighbor. And it used to be worse before we opened 24 hours. There was people used to hang out around the store after the store was closed at 12 o'clock. Now we don't have anybody hanging out. We have 24 hours video. We have monitors that are sitting on the register, by the register. Our employees can watch everything that goes on outside. If there is anybody hanging out, we either go out and talk to them or we call the police. We chain off that area. We have put more lighting on. So I've watched the video almost every week. We don't see anybody hanging out in that area. And we have cameras, 2 cameras there that record 24 hours a day in that area.
Are those videos saved to a hard drive?
For 30 days they are.
Okay.
And every week, at least twice a week, I check the video to see if there was anything going on at night in that area. I have never seen anything. Nobody hanging out there.
Could I just ask you a direct question?
Yes.
What is the impetus to keep it open 24 hours a day?
We were asked by our customers why did we close it, and that's what we start. We had 600 signatures first time we wanted our store open. So we had 600 signatures, and then as time went on, we started, when we first got the permission to open, we had another customer that came every night and they wanted the store open at night. Some people go to work at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and some people were getting off late. They would stop in, and that was the main reason.
Okay. And it's been about a year since you've been open?
Year and a half, sir.
Year and a half?
Yes.
And do you have a count of the average number of customers that are coming in?
We have about 40 to 50 customers at night from that period.
Okay. So a fair number of customers?
Yes. And we do not sell alcohol after 12 o'clock.
Right. And that's posted in the store?
That's posted in the store.
And do you have any kind of data breaking down when the customers are coming between midnight and 6?
It just varies, and I mean we do 2-hour counts, and it just varies. 10 customers, 15 customers, 10 customers, like that.
Okay, so there's no sort of bulge of customers
No.
from midnight to 2?
No.
That type of thing?
No.
And in regard to the sound wall proposal, would you be willing to foot the cost of putting a sound wall in?
I mean, it depends on what that cost is. So I could share the cost.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Other, John?
Yeah, I guess I'll go. It is really difficult. I mean, it's difficult to find a balance in the middle there. I mean, I guess at the last session, we heard a lot of people talk in defense of the 7-Eleven. And, when you've come and made this appeal tonight, it's definitely a moving appeal. And I'm trying to, last time and this time, I guess, also, what I generally try to do is try to find a win-win place in the middle where it works for everybody in some way, which is one of the reasons why I suggested to look at other mitigating things, thinking in my head about a sound wall, because that, could work. And I guess, the mayor here asked you a couple of times about what you thought about the sound wall. And I'm still curious to hear what you think about the sound wall, because really you talked about the fact that you wanted them to be closed.
Yes, my first choice obviously would be to have 24 hours in our neighborhood. That's definitely my first choice. The customers who work swing shifts or come home late, there is one in a town this size. There is one open. It's the same franchise. I still struggle with the fact that what it does to my neighborhood, what it does to my property value. The 24-hour convenience store can cost me an extra minimum, they said, 20% loss of property value.
It's significant, yes.
That is significant. It's big. It's huge. And our property value, we just refied. Our mortgage at one time was less than a quarter of our property value. Now it's over half, and it's $100 and something thousand less. But now with the property value dropping, it's over half of our property value now. I can't afford to lose it, and I don't think it's like it lays in your hands to make that decision. If it has to go, the sound wall is the only way. I don't think I should be asked to pay for it. I'm not the one that wants it opened. My first thought is there's no reason to have another one open, especially when it is surrounded on 3 sides by residents.
Yeah, well, that's true. How do you feel about the sound wall?
If it has to be open, then the sound wall is the only solution I see. But I would still research my property value, and I would look somewhere to be recompensated for that. I think that's my right.
Yeah, I guess I'm done.
Ryan, do you have? Yeah, I called for public comment and none came. Is there any other public comment at this point? Okay, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council. Ryan?
Misty, I personally do believe that you are inconvenienced. And from a personal level, I think that you are impacted by the 7-Eleven, for the record. I try not to make personal decisions up here. I try to weigh every piece of the puzzle as if I lived in a different state, in which case it's very difficult to do because I look at you and at your part of my community as much as anybody else. I've weighed a lot of different options here in my own personal view. I know a lot of people, parents, and people who access different hours. I think in my parents' generation, it would be asinine to have a concept of a 24-hour store because usually one parent worked and it was a different society. There were 600 signatures that I saw on the Planning Commission that said that they would use the store in the off hours. 7-Eleven made an amazing amount of concessions, the largest being, in my opinion, offering not to sell alcohol, which to me was going to be by far the biggest selling. In my mind, I would assume they would have sold more alcohol from 12 to 2 a.m. than all of the groceries or all of the people that come in during the other hours. A huge pro that I would give to keep it open was what we at the Planning Commission level asked from the chief and why we had 2 6-month reviews. And without going back through the notes, there, to my knowledge, there were less noise complaints. I think that part of her situation reminds me of a lot of the issues that we dealt with down at the Good Earth. There are people who bought homes next to a commercial business. Not to say that that's a bad thing to do, but it's part of why some people choose to live in other areas. At the charrette we had for the Good Earth, we heard all kinds of complaints, but what I really liked about the outcome was we found a solution. There was one truck at 5 a.m. There was, and I don't know how the follow-up has been, but I've seen the 7-Eleven really make an amazing amount of concessions. I personally would use the store between those hours. And that's not just for me, so I can relate to some of these other people. I see a large amount of people saying that this would serve them, and we have to remember that the people that we're talking about serving, the 50 people a night, are from here. I don't see a lot of people driving off Sir Francis Drake going all the way down Bolinas to go get a Slurpee. I think that the people that are using the store are people that live in the apartments and people that have off schedules. And if they're not buying beer, they're most likely buying food and sustenance and diapers and things that they need. I think that you just happen to live in an area that's going to have sound based on where it is. I see the park as an area where people will go. I see the arguments that the Good Earth neighbors had made, and we tried to work it out. I've seen you and your husband show that you definitely have burden. I have not seen one other person tell me, outside of you, who I believe are the most directly impacted, that this is a bad idea. So if you have signatures and you have a lot of people that share your concerns, I have not heard or seen one other than you who are most likely impacted. By shutting down the business, I don't think your problem will totally be solved. It may help. It may not help. I came up with another idea that my goal to obtain a balance for everybody is that I can throw out an idea that the store would be allowed to sell alcohol at 2 and close from 2 to 6 a.m. I think that might give them enough of the money that they may need to sustain themselves, and we can get maybe not a 24-hour town. I think that the people from 2 to 6 a.m. are very few comparatively. I've seen this business do a lot to try to come into the community with how they're doing all these concessions, and it's definitely not an easy decision. I don't want you to think it's a slam dunk. I just see 2 people saying that they're impacted, and I see hundreds of signatures of people I know on this list saying that they would like to have it open. I hear the chief telling me that the complaints have actually gone down and that the people being in the store actually provides your home a better service. So if we can get the 7-Eleven to pay for the entire sound wall and we can give this a go, I think that's an option. I think that if 7-Eleven has to make a concession of maybe 2 to 5 a.m., they close for 3 hours, I see that as an option. I just like to find a way to bring everybody together to find a consensus.
That was an option that I came up with also early on.
Madam Mayor, could I weigh in here?
Yeah.
This is a fairly formal process here, and you've closed the public hearing. There are property rights at stake here of both the appellant and the people who have the permit. And so you have before you a staff recommendation that needs to be addressed. And it seems like you're going down a path toward kind of a negotiation, which is a fine thing to do, but not necessarily in this forum. So you maybe need to decide if you want to defer it to staff for further negotiations or take a vote on the item that's before you, or you could open it up for more public testimony and have more input.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm gonna. I will. Can you give me a chance to say something? I'm going to reopen public comment to give you a chance to do that, but we're going to focus on the issue at hand for us tonight, okay?
Okay, I actually was one of my suggestions to go ahead and sell liquor and close at 2 a.m. That way they don't lose business. That's an important amount of business, obviously, for them. And it's more reasonable if they were closed from 2 to 6 that there wouldn't be more disturbances. And then that's a big chunk of their business, like you said, would be from midnight to, especially with alcohol. Go ahead and sell it. Let them get their revenue for that. But it is the property rights. It is the property value. I did knowingly move into a place where a business closed at 11 p.m. That's still an issue to me. The park, children's laughter is one of my favorite sounds. The fire department is reassuring to hear. My husband was actually in the fire department when we moved there.
Okay, I think you've addressed the issue, so I'm going to ask you to sit down. I'm going to reclose public comment and bring it back to the council for us to make a decision. John?
Yeah, I mean, the issue of the business selling alcohol 12 to 2, I think, you know, it's something, this isn't really about this business making money. This is about service, that, you know, this business being useful to the people in the community. And hearing reports, I mean, I don't live on that corner, so I don't know, but hearing reports that there were more incidents before than there are now, and hearing the owner of the 7-Eleven or the manager saying that they are actively trying to keep people from congregate there suggests to me that maybe it is less noisy. I mean, it's not noiseless. Maybe it is less noisy with this open and doing a service to the community. So to me, what that says is, how do I get you some sleep, Misty? You know? And to me, a sound barrier makes some sense, because if it's going to be noisy one way or the other, maybe that makes sense. And, you know, is 8 feet the right height for this sound wall? I don't know. I mean, does this, you know, 7-Eleven have an overhanging roof that sound's going to bounce off of? And, you know, that should probably be addressed. You know, maybe there's some surface treatment that can be in conjunction with the sound wall. But I think what we have before us is the sound wall, and we really need to decide whether that's appropriate. And I'm inclined to believe that it may well be, but we need to, that's what we have before us.
I'm inclined to wonder, and would love to hear the four of you respond to something if you were sitting in her shoes. You buy a house, you put your life savings in it, and you live next to a store, which is open from 7 to 11, just like it says on the masthead of the store. And all of a sudden, the store comes to the town and gets a permit which says, well, 7 to 11 is nice, but in light of everything, why don't you can stay open 24 hours. You'll make a couple extra bucks. Property owners' property values takes a significant hit. Her sleeping patterns, those of her life is changed. Everything is changed, and through no fault of her own. And now I hear her elected representative sit up here and say, well, we'll put up a sound wall, or we put up a chain link fence, or we're going to have cameras outside, or the police, you know, have done their job, but their reporting suggests, I would say, indeterminate, interesting information. I'm telling you, they'd kill us. I would kill you if I was sitting there, because it's not fair. You buy something with knowledge. I bought a loft in San Francisco, and there was a Gold's Gym 15, 20 feet away. Man, you'd want to talk about noise. You would kill for the noise you have now over there. I once rented a house on a Sunday on Bush Street in San Francisco. Sunday's not a good day to figure that out. Monday is a very good day to figure that out. I was living in that place for a year under a lease. You purchase or you rent with knowledge as an adult of what you're buying into. You don't and shouldn't have everything undercut by your town. If this was a question of the chief coming to us and saying, I got to put a substation here, I got to put my guys and gals out there for public safety, I wouldn't agree with you. But my heavens, it's not the only place to get milk. I know in the last time I said it's 5 minutes away and you said by car. Fair enough. But if you need the necessities, hey, it is there on your way home on the swing shift. That is available there. This is undercutting and really, really diminishing a resident's quality of life. And if any of us were sitting there, you'd be agreeing with me.
Go ahead, Ryan.
That's some good grandstanding. And I agree with you, but that's not what the facts are telling us. The facts are telling us is that she may feel as though the noise is coming from 7-Eleven, but the time study and the amount of reports are not saying that story, David. The story is being told that there are less complaints, that there are less people, and that even though she is impacted, that's a good story. I don't believe that the facts support your argument. What I'm hearing and what I've witnessed late at night is that they are ushered out of there. They have been moved off that corner by a chain. They have lights. Your story would hold if the chief supported it with the information in the packet, but that's not what it supports. It says that there are less problems, that there is less noise. So that leads me to believe, and the homework and looking at the calls, that people are going to get pulled over at 7-Eleven, and people are going to pull into 7-Eleven and make noise whether that store is open or not. So although my elected official's job is to make sure that we try to take care of her and her property values, there are 50 of our neighbors a night that are using this service. If you could prove to me that closing the store during those hours would make her argument more valid, I would agree with you 100%. I just don't see that.
Well, one person's grandstanding is another's credible argument. And when she shows up with a piece of paper that demonstrates that she's spoken to all of her adjoining neighbors, and they all agree with her, as much as I appreciate the, shall I say, objective evidence that the chief is able to produce from calls is entirely different and less valuable to me than the subjective evidence that she's able, truthfully, I believe, to come forward and tell this council.
Ryan?
I would agree with you. I have not seen a signature. I have not heard one word. Okay, this has been going on for 2 years, David, almost 2 years. And that's the first thing that comes up on the last day we're supposed to make up a decision. That would have been really helpful to see 6 months ago on the Planning Commission. That would have been really helpful last meeting, right? And all I'm saying is I would love to continue this and look at that. I would love to get some of your neighbors in here to testify in your behalf. I think that would be a very good thing for you to do to sway my point. But this has been going on for over 1.5 years.
If only government was nice and easy. I would say that we could continue this for the purpose of, and I think council was suggesting this, for the idea of expanding their hours, as you had originally agreed to perhaps 2 p.m. with the addition of alcohol. And then have a 4-hour closure, but that's not before us. That would require us to continue this hearing, which if you are willing to do, and if you are willing to do, I certainly would support that. If we can reach happiness among all, fantastic. And so if that's where we're going on this, let's wrap this up and move on to something really interesting like open space acquisition.
If I could conclude that I agree with what you're saying, but I'd also like to see some proof of the appraisal. I think that would weigh very heavy in your favor. Misty, I'm surprised that argument comes up at the 19th hour. I mean, although I may agree with you, what I need to judge my decisions on are based on the information I'm giving. So if you're bringing this to us at the last minute after 3 carryovers, it doesn't hold the weight until it's in front of me. So I would get people in here, if this were to be continued, to support your arguments and give us something that we can support your arguments other than you and your husband's personal testimony versus 600 signatures of the community. And I think that it would weigh greatly in your favor for me to be able to read that evidence when making this decision.
What I said was no. Okay, do we have a motion to continue at this point?
So moved.
I'd second it.
Okay, motion, Weinsoff, second Bregman, all in favor.
And
we need
To the October meeting.
And you're continuing it for the purpose of bringing it back to hear more testimony, or do you want staff to do something in the?
Could I just make a suggestion? One, I think we need to look into whether 7-Eleven is willing to pay for the sound wall. 7-Eleven is increasing the burden to the adjoining property. They maybe have the responsibility to mitigate the burden that they're creating on the adjoining property. Second, I think there should be some discussion about whether we can come up with an alternative schedule where there's a hiatus of business hours at 7-Eleven, whether it's 2 to 4, 2 to 5. 2 to 5, 2 to 6. Whether there's any room for negotiation where it makes sense from 7-Eleven's point of view to consider that kind of an arrangement. But this is not an easy decision, and I definitely would like to pursue it a little further before we are forced to a vote.
So Judy, Jim, you're going to put your shoulders to the wheel on this one and work this out? Well, you know, Judy, as I often say, you could talk Oedipus into leaving home, so please, please join us on this one.
Okay, is that a clear enough motion? Okay. October? Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion to continue carries. Let's move on to the next item. It's on our regular agenda, request by Open Space Committee, authorization to negotiate for the purchase of a property on Upper Ridgeway. Is this, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Jack Judkins. I'm the co-chair of your Open Space Committee. And I am here to ask you to approve the Open Space Committee recommendation that we be authorized to negotiate for the purchase of 2 parcels that are located near the corner of Willow and Chester Avenue. You've been introduced to this property already by the chair of the Open Space Committee, who appeared at your June meeting and provided you with pictures, maps, and a discussion of the property during public expression time. I'm going to try to be brief, so if I'm too brief, feel free to ask me questions. I'd also point out that the Open Space Committee chair and a member of the Open Space Committee are here to provide additional information if you need it. In your packet, you have a map that shows the location of, there are actually 3 parcels being discussed. 2 of them are merged and are the parcels that are of particular interest to the Open Space Committee. As you were informed in June, these parcels contain an informal trail that leads up to Town of San Anselmo Hawthorne Canyon open space. From there, it also connects to a town-owned park called Triangle Park, and it also connects with the trail system that extends up into the backside of Sleepy Hollow and the open space district lands beyond that. That is really, to members of the Open Space Committee, the primary reason why this is of interest, and we think it would be of great value to the community. It provides an access to open space that otherwise only exists informally and on a piece of property that could be eventually developed. It is at this point on a portion of, I'm not even sure if it's actually a street or a driveway, but it is on an easement that is identified as Upper Ridgeway, the street. There's also a possibility of having a 3rd parcel donated that's shown as the donation parcel, which also adjoins Town of Fairfax Triangle Park and might at some point in the future, depending on what happens with other undeveloped properties, provide a second means of access to that park. So at this point, we have had an indication from the property owner that he is interested in discussing with the Town of Fairfax the sale of this property. We have reason to believe that it may be at a price that is reasonable, and we want to pursue that. And so tonight what we are doing is we're asking for the authority to begin those negotiations. There's really no cost involved. There may be some expenditures of already budgeted Open Space Committee funds, for example, if deemed necessary for a survey or an appraisal. That may or may not happen. Any deal or potential deal that may be negotiated, of course, would be subject to town council approval, and although I didn't say so in the staff report, I should say that, of course, the anticipation is that we're not going to be using any funds, any existing town funds, to support this acquisition, except town funds that are already specifically dedicated for open space purposes. And so, and we anticipate that there will be some level of fundraising that will have to be done to support this deal, but it would not, as we envision it now, be a drain on existing resources that could be used for anything other than open space. So with that, open it to questions or any other public commentary.
Get questions from council members first.
Just,
Larry?
have you guys, you've gone through your vetting process with it? Just
Yes.
as far as looking at the property, looking at any liability issues, land stability, all those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that at this moment we have vetted all issues, but it is open space property and it does have trees on it, so, you know,
They're
we're not
dangerous.
free of liability, or free of, no, I should say we're not free, or from my opinion only, the town is not free of the potential of litigation over issues like that. On the other hand, we have considered it, as we do with every possible potential acquisition, you know, but unfortunately open space comes with risks, so although I think personally, legally, the risk of liability is low. The risk of lawsuit may not be, but the risk of liability is low.
The only reason I was bringing it up is when we were discussing acquisition of the Wall property, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago. There were a number of cases that had been brought about landslides and other alleged, you know, claims against that property owner. So it's just something.
Right. Well, there are no, as far as I understand it, there are no landslide issues, but we will certainly consider that and bring to the council full information.
Yeah, I mean, I would just want us to do just a basic check in the courthouse and just see if there's anything filed. But and this actually links to Hawthorne Canyon from Fairfax, so it sort of creates a pathway from our town over to that ridge. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I guess last month after it was initially on there, you know, I went up and walked the property and to, you know, it does, in fact, I think it's steeper on parts of that upper Ridgeway Road or whatever it is. But it does have the trail zigzagging across it and where you can get up to the ridge. And it is a nice, you know, it's a nice piece of property. I didn't see any trees that were in imminent danger of falling, you know, and I didn't see evidence from my non-soils engineer perspective of slides, though I have, you know, tried to educate myself on you know, what you know, slides kind of look like. I used to live with a soil scientist, but it does seem like an interesting piece of property, and it, especially with what it connects to. I guess one concern that I have is that a person, I believe, who's be representing the owner is the immediately adjacent owner. I mean, the neighbor immediately next door would be representing the seller of the property.
That is my understanding.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure, you know, that may raise issues for him. I'm not sure it raises issues for us. We're not going to agree to a price that isn't.
Yeah, I mean, oh.
I'm not sure that I see that raises issues for us. It may raise issues for him. I don't know.
Yeah, it could go both ways. I mean, he could be very interested in it remaining open space and not having a house built next to him. So, you know, but at the same time, he's a realtor, and realtors get a percentage of the price. And obviously, you know, from the town's perspective, it'd be nice if this price was as close to free as possible.
Right.
Didn't he agree to waive?
Well, we don't have any firm agreement one way or another, but you know, I will tell you that I do not think his interests, although of course he may benefit from having open space adjacent
somewhat. I
to
mean,
his
but
property.
there is work to be done in.
But I believe he's
it.
doing this out of, not out of a means of gaining income. I don't think
What?
that's
Yeah, I
his
can't imagine
motivation,
there's
but
a
that's
lot of
just
money
my
there, yeah.
personal feel on it. And, and again, we're not going to agree to anything that isn't, a fair and reasonable price. And it's why I mentioned the fact that we may decide we need an appraisal to confirm that. Although, with vacant land like that, it's kind of a crapshoot, but.
Is it zoned R1 or?
I forget the zoning, I'm sorry.
I mean, I would assume so.
It's certainly residentially zoned. I don't know if it's R1. Do you know, Jim?
And there's a sewer outlet near there, so.
I don't think on that one it is, but.
Ryan?
Jim, do we have we're just going to allow them the ability to negotiate. If they come back with something, they would still have to be approved by us, right? We would still have a better chance to look at how it's going to be paid for. So there's no really, I mean.
Zero risk. I mean, and you also could have a closed session about this. If they brought back an offer that you could
We
discuss
could, okay.
in closed session before you brought it back an offer.
The one thing I'll note to the rest of the council after sitting on the, no disrespect to David as an attorney, but we were bake seller type group of people when it first started. It has been replaced with attorneys and very brilliant minds. So I have full confidence that this group will be able to put together a very good plan and a good way to come up with it before it comes back to us.
Approved by my departure.
The residential zoning is RD 5.5 to 7, which means that the lot size has to be between 5,500 and 7,000, depending on a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. What's that? For one lot.
Sorry,
yes.
for one house, yeah.
Okay, any other council comments, or are we going to take public comment?
Easy vote compared to the one that preceded it. I would move to authorize.
Let's do public comment first. Can we do public comment?
There's none here.
There is plenty of public comment. There we go.
That was
we
it.
got a woohoo. All right, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council.
To authorize the open space, to provide authorization to the Open Space Committee to enter into its negotiation for the purchase of the property on Upper Ridgeway, provided, and please nod your head yes, that my house is not within 500 feet. Thank you.
Second.
With that caveat, I make the motion.
Second.
I think Ryan already
Unless-
beat you
oh,
to it.
Ryan already beat me.
While David was caveating. Motion Weinsoff, second O'Neill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Good luck. Item number 24. This is some, have at it.
And I am still Jack Judkins, and I am still co-chair of the Open Space Committee, and I'm bringing this item on behalf of the Open Space Committee. This particular item seeks council adoption of a resolution that would allow the town to accept title to a parcel as open space property that has been offered as a donation. In other words, there's no direct cost associated with the acceptance of this property. This particular property is located between Scenic and Redwood Road and near the intersection of Scenic and Bay Roads. And so Exhibits 3 and 4 provide a map of exactly where that is, because it does take, I don't think anybody has ever heard of Scenic Trail until you had. Well, of course you had, because it's a trail, but it's an easement, and a town-owned, town-held easement. And this property, along with, I guess, 6 others, are located along Scenic Trail. They also adjoin this property adjoins on all sides undeveloped property. So the fact that this property currently may not be developable, I don't think really plays a large role in whether or not we should accept it. It is up near the county limits. It's up near a ridge before the top ridge. It is visible from parts of Fairfax. It is as I say, adjoining to the east and west a number of properties that might form an open space corridor that might provide for actually the use of a trail along there. We, at the request of the town manager, we obtained a title report. The title report shows no issues related to the property, except at the time the title report was obtained, there were taxes past due and owing. Those have now been paid by the property owners as a condition simply to getting the town manager to agree to put this on the agenda for you to consider, and certainly something I agreed with, because if it's a donated property, it ought to be donated, and we shouldn't take the liability that may exist with past due taxes. So it is free and clear of past due taxes. It has no liens and encumbrances. It is desirable for all the reasons I've mentioned. It's undeveloped. It's along or near one ridge line below the top. It adjoins private open space, a private open space easement that the property above and to the north of this property, I think, was required to dedicate as part of their development. And, you know, on the simple theory that, you know, an open space property in hand is worth something, having. There are downsides. I mean, it is open space property, and therefore it has trees. It is heavily wooded. It is steeply sloped. And its current development potential is probably very low, all of which is pointed out in the staff comments, all of which I agree with. I still think that, you know, so you approved, we developed, you approved criteria for assessing property, and this has some attributes that are positive, but we also added to that criteria other considerations that could countervail what might otherwise be a low trait value. And those included the cost of the property. And in this case, the direct cost is zero. There's the loss of some property tax income for all of the various line items that appear on a property tax bill that might come to Fairfax or things that serve Fairfax. And there may be some limited cost associated with, you know, concerns about maintenance. So although, you know, this is truly undeveloped, I don't know if it's never been touched, but it appears to my untrained eye as never having been touched. So for those reasons, you know, the Open Space Committee unanimously supported the acceptance of this donation, and we are asking you to authorize that.
Ryan?
Well, as a member of the Open Space Committee, we loved the opportunity to get something for what we work really hard on that committee for a long time, and Fairfax has a long history of accepting these tax default and donated properties, and they turn to be very valuable assets over the course of time. Who knows where the boundaries are going to fall at the end of the day, but a bird in the hand concept for the goal of the Open Space Committee, which is to preserve our natural environment, we are gaining part of the natural history in its existing state. I'm not 100% sure on it, but I think we are actually exempt from some issues if you obtain land and maintain it or keep it in its existing state. I think you're not liable for as much as if you started to do things on the property. But that being said, this would be a great asset, because you never know how it's going to come into play for you later on to, you know, maybe grow an area or stop something else from going there that you might not like.
Thank you.
Do we have a resolution? Because I seem not to be able to find it in my packet.
There's a couple of items.
It's Resolution 1260. It's in the packet. So, I mean, you know, if it's a quality of life decision, and it's an easy decision, I think. I think it's important to preserve these infill spaces just to keep development density down. It's a quality of life issue of not developing every single property in a residential zone like this. So, yeah, there is a little bit of a downside. We're going to have to, you know, assuming we accept it, we're going to need to, you know, watch it and take care of it. But that's a good thing, and I think ultimately it's something that improves and increases the value of that neighborhood. And I support it, and hopefully it's a continuation of a trend of building that type of activity into our town's culture and bringing people together, and does a lot of good things for the town, and really excellent work by the Open Space Committee. So I would definitely support it, and I'll move approval. Actually, I would give it to you, Ryan, if you want to do that.
Let's go open to the public comment first. Anyone from the public? More thumbs up. Okay, I'll bring it back. Close public comment and bring it back to the council. And it is really nice to see the criteria in action. I think that's something that I know we've sort of been clamoring for a while, and it's nice to see how that really works. So thank you very much for that. Let's get a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 1260.
If you want to see it.
Second. A resolution to the town council to accept the donation of the property at Upper Scenic, accessor's parcel number 0012204, as recommended by the Open Space Committee.
Motion O'Neill. Second. Reed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Well done. We are well past our 10 o'clock point, but we have 2 items left. Is there one? Do we want to delay either? I'd rather not delay the transition committee piece. I don't know, Larry, if you want to.
Are we going to meet again on the 10th? Is that the?
I'm sorry, I should have said that at the outset of the meeting. The agenda, that we're not going to be meeting on the 10th.
We're not going to be meeting.
No, we're going to have a special meeting, I think, especially, anyway, we have to issue an addendum now for this project.
Okay.
Anyway, we won't be meeting on the 10th.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine kicking 26 over to the next meeting, just with the proviso, there is going to be a meeting of the Marin Municipal Water District on September 11th to discuss their draft vegetation management plan, which sounds pretty wonky, but actually is a pretty important thing for us to be considering. Because the alternatives posed are a plan that relies on pesticides and another plan that doesn't. And considering that the Marin Water District lands are the source of 80% of our drinking water, it's something to think about. And it's something Fairfax has always taken a leadership position on. So September 11th is going to be the first meeting for public comment. Frankly, I put it on the agenda just to help get the word out. So I would just move that we put it over to the October meeting. I'll be at that meeting. I'll bring a report back to the council at that time.
Also, Mayor, both staff and I forgot to mention that the town is hosting a meeting on the 29th, Saturday, between 10 to 12 on the Good Earth and community. Al Blaylock contacted me. They're moving for a license 41 and was concerned about potential community opposition. I contacted Lane Sprague and conversation pursued from there to having a follow-up conversation about things that are working and things that might not be working out there just a couple of months after they've opened up a good time to take a second look and make appropriate adjustments. So staff is kind enough to lead that conversation as they did last time, and we are hosting it. Yes.
Saturday morning type of deal?
Yep, 10 to 12.
10 to 12.
12 on the 29th?
10 to 12.
Okay, let's move to item number, so we'll, do I need to make a motion to push 26 to the next? Okay, good. Number 25, Judy, why don't you kick this one off?
Yes, we have a very limited audience, but I think you've read I'll assume that you've read the report, and the committee needs direction to, we've come up with 2 alternatives, which we've described here. I'm very prejudiced and was pushing for the town manager, public works being 2 separate positions, but the committee has, you know, as a group, looked at different scenarios and different things that would work, and I was tasked with trying to show financially, and Michael Bybrett did a great job of putting some numbers together so that you could compare these alternatives. Now, in the one alternative, you'll notice that we talked about, well, there were some things we didn't like about the town manager public works combination as it's been in the last couple of years. And we thought one thing that might make it more successful or make it work better would be to add some type of a management analyst or a project manager position to the staff, who would then supplement the manager public works person to make them more successful at doing the joint job. I was trying to figure out how to show you, Rick, how to show you the actual money that we save over how much a public works director brings in, and that's all kind of difficult to pin down because of our different sources of funding. And, you know, as you heard earlier, Councilmember Bragman was the one really who got us this bike spine money, and there's different sources for the money and different ways it comes in. I can't credit it all to a public works director. And anyway, I wasn't successful in showing how much that person would save us in any direct way. And that's why I solicited comments from a couple of public works people, our current public works consultant, as well as Sean Condry, the public works director in San Anselmo, for kind of their opinion and how they would proceed, or the positive about it. Anyway, so in lieu of numbers, specific numbers about what a public works director could save us, those comments are kind of germane for the discussion. And to continue it would be, I think the committee's recommendation would be to add a management analyst or another position similar to what Yvonne Roberts used to do, to add a little more support for a combination position to make it successful. So those are the 2 options, and I think as a committee we agreed that that was really more of a political decision with some of this information we've given you. So we would like direction on which way you wanted to go. And we also, it's a little late on the agenda, but we were hoping that maybe people would have comments about what they would like to see in a town manager. I did get an email today from Gary Graham of 19 Broadway, who wanted to urge you to, or urge the committee to include somebody from the business community on the committee, and also to consider a local approach to the recruitment, that it would be somebody who's already in the committee, in the community, which the committee has talked about. So we did talk about a more localized, focused approach that might elicit some candidates who were already in our community. So the direction we would like is the qualifications maybe that you want or that are most important to you, and how this would look to you as a continuation of the town manager public works director combination, or as 2 separate positions with support, without support. Our finance director is here and can talk about some of these numbers, but the numbers that are presented to you in this chart with the department heads are all kind of the same salary, so the new town manager rate, and then we added a new management analyst person in there too, what that would cost. So, you know, it's hard to fight against the savings that you get when you join the two positions. So that's definitely an advantage to keeping it as two positions, but also it narrows your field of who you'll get to apply if they have to have public works experience and be a town manager. So there's a lot of little nuances here, and I don't know what answers we can give you as a committee on what we've talked about in our reasoning, and since John and Pam and Michael are all members of the committee and they're here too, any questions you have for us, I'm sure we can answer.
Thank you, Judy.
Thanks.
Larry?
We would save a similar amount of money if we combined any department head with town manager. So it could be public works, it could be planning, it could be finance, it could be police.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just don't want to get us boxed in like, well, we're short now in public works and, you know, we've got to kind of stay in that model because, you know, I think, I mean, I've got my own opinions about the direction I'd like to see us go, I think.
Yeah.
But in talking to Chris Martin about the Ross recruitment that they went through for new town manager, you know, his description of the applicant pool was that it was pretty thin. And out of the whole, you know, recruitment that they did, which was done, I don't know if it was done through Lonnie or one of the other agencies. I mean, they ended up getting, you know, 5 candidates, 3 of them sort of limp through the process, and it was not, you know, the most sterling group of candidates. And, you know, I was here when we recruited Linda, you know, whatever, 7, 8 years ago, and it was like, you know, it was an interesting process to go through. So what am I rambling about? Just that we would, in effect, if we combined a department head in that manager job, whatever department it would be, we create the same savings, correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Point.
And that's what we were trying to do with these numbers, to show you that it's a department head, whether it was Public Works or, you know, any department head, it would be this similar cost.
Okay. And I think if we went, assuming we go that direction, which Ross had for many years with Gary Broad, was planning and manager.
Right.
You know, that we create a little, you know, add a position in our depth chart, you know, like an administrative assistant. And I'm just saying, we have many scenarios that we can pursue. And I don't think we should be locked into like, well, we've got to go like find a public works, you know, manager person. That worked out well last time, didn't it?
No, it didn't. So what you're saying then, Larry, is maybe just to go out for the town manager to see what we get and base it on what we get and the talent that comes forward?
I would ask Jim, I mean, some of this is personnel discussion, in my opinion. So I'm a little uncomfortable sort of being completely forward with, you know, my thought process. But yeah, I mean, I think we should stay flexible, and I think we should, you know, we have done well being nimble and being, you know, able to, you know, go new directions. And I don't want to see us locked into, well, we need a public works manager person because that's what we did last time. And I won't bring up my point again about how well that worked, but, you know, but I did. Okay, so.
I have a thought. I'd be interested in your thoughts on all of this, council members. I'm reluctant to drop tens of thousands of dollars to hire a headhunting firm to go out. And I'd be interested about the idea of having a having the subcommittee approach any random selection of big and small city town managers and say, who's in your bullpen? Who's up and coming? Now, I can imagine their response would be, why would I want to lose somebody that I think is so terrific to you? But on the other hand, I think most people know that if they have somebody talented, they're going to go to the major leagues eventually, and they may be able to boost the career. I think that's a cost savings. I think it's a personal statement from a respected town manager in another jurisdiction, and we can go large and we can go small. And I think that would be a cost savings and reflective of some of the concerns I'm hearing in the community, that we do this in perhaps a different Fairfax way, a little more cost effective.
I believe our plan was actually to go a step above the town manager and ask the clerks. I figured I can make that joke now that but yeah, I think that's definitely part of the team's strategy, is to, as a part of our sort of local search. And also what we discovered too is that a lot of job openings are found on Craigslist. And that's really easy for us to post. Like, it doesn't have to be in Western City. We can do this on the cheap, and that's definitely that's sort of the transition team has been talking about. Phase 1 recruitment being a very sort of pointed.
I hear what
local.
you're saying there, but this is what I'm disagreeing with. It's going to people who have great expertise and asking them. They're putting their reputation on the line to recommend somebody. Craigslist is really just a cheap way to get a headhunter.
What we're going to end up doing is creating an ad to post the position. That's what you do even with Lonnie Hayhurst, who I thought was good. And there's some of the headhunters, they have different styles and they have different lists. And maybe we don't need to do that, but we're certainly going to need to go through that exercise. But you may not really need to look that far to find the right person.
I agree, Larry, and that's what the committee we want to do a small focus search. If it's unsuccessful, we might end up with a Lonnie Hayhurst or something if we don't come up with candidates or people. That's the committee is thinking that we want to do that. I know some people who are in government in other towns, and I know some of the up and coming people, and we can, I wrote this job announcement that Lonnie Hayhurst used, I put it together and printed it and so forth, but he had his contacts and his way of finding people. But I think we can do a lot of that in-house.
Yeah.
And then if we don't come up with the candidates that you think you're comfortable with, then we reevaluate and try something else.
Yeah,
but I think
you may well
we want to try it that way.
Yeah,
it is kind of the Fairfax do it our way kind of approach.
From Chris Martin, Ross was a pretty plum job. I think it's it's small, but I think it's a fairly prestigious place to be, and it was sobering to hear what he had to say about that process. And we may not have to look that far.
I think it would be helpful for everyone's gotten their packet with the previous job announcement that Judy wrote. We're obviously going to make some changes to that. We've been kind of going through ourselves as the criteria that we think is critical, and making sure to kind of highlight that. But any changes to this or any additional, I know that I took a comment from Steve Rosa at Marin Sanitary Service, who said that that the town manager who serves on the JPA for the town of Fairfax should really, he was like, if you could get, because Mike, I'm happy to say that's one thing that Michael Rock did and did well, was really advocated for a more kind of progressive move in the world of waste, and certainly a place that Fairfax has taken leadership. So that was his comment, to add in something on there, which I thought was a good addition. But we're certainly open to more additions, and I guess I'd like to hear from I think Ryan and David about the idea of specifically going for recruiting for a town manager rather than recruiting for someone who's got public works experience. Because that's really kind of the decision that the transition team is up against at this point.
I think Larry put it well. I think that you narrow the focus arbitrarily, whereas you're best to get, the best player. I'm killing you with these sports metaphors, but you're going to get you draft like the 49ers do. You draft the best player, you'll find a position from later. That's where I would do.
If I can too, you never know that one question is going to be in that process of, oh, by the way, do you have any public works experience? And you never know what you're going to strike. I agree. I think you just go for the best and see, you see what you get. And I think I liked your idea, Judy, of staying close to the in-ring and then, concentric circles out. If it's not working, we just kind of slowly bring it out. But I think there's plenty of talent here in this county, and I think plenty of talent probably right here if we can just try to reach it.
Thank you. I think that's clear direction. And very helpful for us. Thank you. We are adjourning tonight in honor of Bill Parker and Michael Kenyon. And we're adjourning to, we're actually adjourning to the September 10th meeting. We're adjourning to an October, or we're to an undetermined special meeting. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Motion Bragman, second Reed. On. Yes. Yes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, so much. Late night.